Chapter 1321. Let go of me. At that moment, Qin Song was horrified. He tried to struggle, but he was firmly restrained by Commander Hong. Let go of my grandfather. Let go of the patriarch. Qin Shui and the rest rushed forward in an attempt to save Qin Song. Get lost. Commander Hong swept his sleeve and sent them flying. They crashed heavily onto the ground, and blood dyed the ground red. Xiao Shui. Qin Song's eyes were bloodshot. At this moment, he suddenly felt a cold, killing intent lock onto him. Under this killing intent, he did not even have the strength to resist. The poison-spotted youth looked at him quietly and then grinned. Tell me, where's the person who impersonated me? Otherwise, I'll destroy your entire family. As soon as he said that, the entire hall was enveloped in a cold chill and bone-piercing, killing intent. Many people subconsciously shivered. Was this the terrifying part of the Qingling's sex, young Master Yi? Someone was shocked. On the other hand, Gu Jinghong and the rest from the ancient sword sect watched this scene with a faint smile, like a cat playing with a mouse. Meeting the poison-spotted youth's gaze, Qin Song's face turned pale as he said in a trembling voice, I don't know. You don't know? The poison-spotted youth smirked coldly and pointed at Qin Song. In the next moment, Qin Song's entire right arm exploded on the spot, and scarlet blood spurted out. Qin Song screamed violently. The poison-spotted youth smiled sinisterly. I'll give you one more chance. Tell me where the person who impersonated me is, and I'll spare your life. Kill me, kill me. Qin Song laughed maniacally. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? I won't be able to escape death, even if I tell you. Although he was a little angry that Yi Chun had lied to him, he did not hate him because Yi Chun had not taken anything from the Qin family from the beginning to the end. On the contrary, Yi Chun had given him the Dustfall pill and many true origin pills of the Qin family's elders. He had even severely injured Feng Huazi and saved his life. You're quite courageous. Not only was the poison-spotted youth not angry, but he also smiled. With another finger, a medicinal pill shot out from his hand and landed in Commander Hong's hand. Commander Hong, this is a heart-devouring pill. It can devour a person's heart without harming any other organs. Meeting Commander Hong's gaze, he said in an extremely calm voice, feed it to him. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, I want him to taste the pain of thousands of insects biting his heart. All right. Commander Hong's face slightly changed as he sneered and forcefully fed the pellet into Qin Song's mouth. His sinister methods caused everyone in the hall to be incomparably terrified. They thought in their hearts, as expected of the Green Spirit sect that specializes in medicinal pills, they even have such a vicious medicinal pill. At this time, a fawning voice suddenly sounded in the hall. Young Lord Yi, I know where the person who impersonated you is. At that moment, River Feather's complexion changed. He looked at Su Jiao with disbelief. The poison-spotted youth looked towards the source of the voice and said indifferently, Tell me, and after the matter is done, I will give you a Dustfall pill. Su Jiao was ecstatic when she heard this. She couldn't help but point at River Feather beside her. The person who impersonated you was brought in by River Feather, and it was also River Feather who introduced him to us. He is the Green Spirit sect's young Lord Yi. As soon as these words came out, everyone couldn't help but look at River Feather. Wang Shun and the others, who were originally standing with him, subconsciously retreated far away. Wang Shun added fuel to the fire. Young Lord Yi, Su Jiao, is right. It is River Feather. The poison-spotted youth narrowed his eyes at River Feather, then faintly smiled and said, The Jiang family's young Lord River Feather? Can you tell me where that person is? If I say I don't know, would you believe me? River Feather smiled bitterly, but his expression was still calm. The poison-spotted youth smiled, but didn't say anything. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. Then he stretched out his hand and directly grabbed at River Feather. Boom! A terrifying aura suddenly erupted from River Feather's body, directly intimidating the former. Young Lord Yi, this is not your Green Spirit sect. Don't go too far. Golden Core Stage. The complexions of Su Jiao and the others changed. Then they looked at River Feather with shock. "You actually quietly stepped into the Golden Core stage." The others were also shocked. A mere descendant of a cultivation family was actually able to step into the Golden Core stage at such a young age. This kind of talent, even if placed in the four great cultivation sects, wouldn't be excessive. Early Golden Core stage? Your talent isn't bad. The poison-spotted youth seemed surprised. Then he shook his head and said, "What a pity. Whether it is early Golden Core stage or late Golden Core stage, it can't change anything." As he finished speaking, he directly slapped his hand towards River Feather. When River Feather saw this, all the hairs on his body stood on end. His face was bitter. "Brother Yi, I'm going to die because of you. You can't cheat people like this." Wang Shun and the others suddenly revealed cold smiles. "River Feather, so what if you stepped into the Golden Core stage a step ahead of us? Since you have offended young Lord Yi, it will be hard for you to escape death today." Just as the poison-spotted youth's hand was about to land on River Feather, the sound of something tearing through the air suddenly came from afar. Then, the poison-spotted youth let out a muffled groan and quickly retracted his hand. On that hand, there was a chopstick that had pierced through his palm, and blood was flowing out. Before anyone could react, they heard a cold voice approaching from afar. "Are you so eager to die?" The poison-spotted youth looked over with a gloomy expression. A white-haired man slowly descended from the third floor of the hall. The man was carrying a 6-year-old girl in his arms. Under such a scene, the girl did not show the slightest bit of fear. Instead, she widened her jet-black eyes and sized them up. It's him." At that moment, Commander Hong could not help but say to the poison-spotted youth, "Young Lord Yi, it's this kid who impersonated you." The poison-spotted youth stared fixedly at Yi Chun. Even the young master of the ancient sword sect, Gu Jinghong, and the others were no exception. They could not see through him. They could not see through his cultivation base at all. However, he had pierced through the poison-spotted youth's palm, who had a pseudo-nascent soul cultivation base. Yi Chun ignored everyone's gazes. He looked at Qin Shui and the rest who had fainted on the ground. Subsequently, he walked to Commander Hong slowly and said calmly, "Hand the Qin family's master to me, and I'll spare your life. Brat, you're still boasting shamelessly even when you're about to die." Commander Hong's gaze was extremely sinister. "How dare you pretend to be young Lord Yi? Don't even think about walking out of here alive today." Bleck. Before he could finish speaking, his entire body exploded into a bloody mist. Warm blood splattered on many people's faces. Many people were petrified on the spot. One had to know that Commander Hong was a perfect stage Golden Core cultivator, yet he was killed instantly by the other party. Even his Golden Core was not left behind. Who exactly was this person? Plop. Qin Song fell heavily to the ground. "You really talk too much nonsense." Yi Chun shook his head lightly. Then he extended his hand and grabbed Qin Song through the air. "Immortal Master Yi, why?" Qin Song smiled bitterly. End of this chapter. Chapter 1323. Almost as soon as the governor of Zhaoga City, Xiao Xing, issued the SOS. Within the dreamy Cloud Mountain range, there were mountains everywhere. They were as straight as arrows, and it was difficult for ordinary people to climb them. Towering palaces stood on top of these mountains. Countless waterfalls poured down from the peaks like an upside-down Milky Way. The mist was like clouds, and it was like a celestial land. This was the location of the four major cultivation sects in the Luoxiao region. The dreamy Cloud Mountain range covered an area of tens of thousands of miles. The spiritual energy in the area was like a dragon, and there were countless treasures. However, all of them were occupied by the four major cultivation sections. The four major cultivation sects were the Green Spirit Sect, the Ancient Sword Sect, the Hahuan Sect, and the Heavenly Ghost Sect. In the depths of a cave in the Ancient Sword Sect, there was a deep secret chamber. At this moment, an elder with white hair and a ruddy complexion was sitting cross-legged. The elder wore an ochre robe, and his eyes were closed in concentration. He was motionless, as if he was meditating. At this moment, a blood-red light swept over from the void. It heavily collided with the outside of the cave, and was blocked by a formation. The elder suddenly opened his eyes and reached out with one hand. The formation opened automatically, and he immediately grabbed the blood-red light. It's the governor of Xiaoga City's SOS. Feeling the strong psyche power coming from the blood-red light, the old man frowned and said, Xiao Xing is an early-stage, nascent soul cultivator after all, yet someone could force him to this extent. Could it be that the fierce man who appeared a few days ago has returned? No. I received news that that person had a fierce battle with Senior Qi Huang. After that, there were no more movements. I think he must have been killed by Senior Qi Huang. Speaking up to this point, the elder's eyes flickered slightly. Xiao Xing is a member of our ancient sword sect. We can't just ignore him. Fine, I'll go and take a look. After speaking, he immediately stood up. With a shake of his body, he instantly appeared outside the cave. At this moment, a sword light swept over from the horizon. Suddenly, the figure of a skinny elder appeared, and the latter knelt heavily on the ground. Great Elder, Jinghong's soul tablet is broken. As soon as he said this, the temperature of the world seemed to cool down. The ochre-robed elder narrowed his eyes. Who killed him? The skinny old man withstood the pressure and said in a trembling voice, I'm not sure yet. The young Master Jinghong was attending the banquet at the City Lord Manor in Xiaoga City. Now that he is dead, I'm afraid that is where the problem lies. Xiaoga City again. The ochre-robed elder suddenly smiled. In the next moment, he transformed into a ray of light that shot into the sky. Right at that moment, a ray of green light shot over from afar as well, and it instantly revealed an old man in green robes. The green-robed old man's expression was gloomy. He said indifferently, Brother Gu, what is your purpose in going there? The old man in the ochre robe glanced at him and said expressionlessly, The young master of the ancient sword sect, Gu Jinghong, died in Xiaoga City. Before he could finish, the green-robed old man's expression changed. The young master of the green spirit sect, Yi Chun, also died in Xiaoga City. Their gazes met. Then two extreme, killing intents erupted from them. You killed the young masters of two great sects in the Sunset region. You are truly lawless. Even if this person is a true immortal who descended into the mortal world, he will die today. At the banquet at the City Lord Manor in Xiaoga City. The nature of the banquet had long changed. It was replaced by the stench of blood and killing intent. Countless people looked at the white-haired young man sitting in the middle of the hall with fear on their faces. Their hearts were trembling. This person killed the young master of the Green Spirit sect, Yi Chun, and the young master of the Ancient Sword sect, Gu Jinghong. He even suppressed the nascent soul cultivator, Xiao Xing, the city lord of Xiaoga City. After a series of devastating attacks, this person didn't flee for his life. Instead, he stayed at the scene calmly. Just this bearing alone made everyone look up to him. The atmosphere at the banquet was very oppressive and solemn. Only Yi Chun and his daughter were eating the delicacies on the table. The little girl's eyes widened. She pointed at the delicacy in the middle of the table with the chopsticks in her hand and said, Daddy, what's this? It's quite delicious. That's roasted with a rank 2 mystical beast, the rock sparrow. I think the person who cooked it added a lot of spiritual wine, so the meat is chewy. It's fatty, but not greasy. Yi Chun picked up another piece of meat for her with his chopsticks while smiling. Subsequently, he seemed to have thought of something. He turned his head to look at Qin Song, River Feather, and the rest. Master Qin, young Master Jiang, don't just watch. Eat your chopsticks. Qin Song and River Feather could not help but force a smile upon hearing that. At a time like this, even though the dragon meat was right in front of them, they were not in the mood to eat it. In particular, River Feather. In his heart, he deeply regretted participating in this shitty day-night banquet. Now, he had been completely implicated. He knew very well that Yi Chun had killed the young masters of two great immortal cultivation sects consecutively. He would definitely incur the wrath of the two great immortal cultivation sections. At that time, his identity as the so-called young master of the Jiang clan would be useless. Not only would he die, but the Jiang clan behind him would also be destroyed. Boy, if you know what's good for you, you'd better loosen the restriction on my body now, then cripple your own cultivation and kneel down to be bound. At this time, the governor of Zhaoga City, who was suppressed on the ground, couldn't help but threaten, "You can't withstand the anger of the two cultivation sections." However, Yi Chun did not seem to hear that. The city lord of Zhaoga City, Xiao Xing, scolded him angrily again. "Little brat, are you deaf? Let me go." Ming Ming immediately became unhappy. "Daddy, he's so noisy. Dad, tell him to shut up." Yi Chun chuckled softly and turned his head to glance at Xiao Xing. The latter felt as if his mouth was glued with tape. He could not make any sound at all. Everyone could not help but be dumbfounded. If they hadn't witnessed it for themselves, they wouldn't have believed that a nascent soul would be reduced to such a state. Subsequently, countless eyes looked at Yi Chun and his daughter. Who was this person? Why did he dare to ignore the four cultivation sects? At that moment, Qin Song took a deep breath in and suddenly stood up and said, "Immortal Master Yi, please allow us to leave." At this point, he really did not dare to get involved with Yi Chun anymore. After all, the Kangwu Qin family was only a third-rate cultivation family. "Master Qin, if I were you, I'd stay." However, Yi Chun chuckled softly. "Perhaps your Qin family will rise to become the #1 cultivation force in the Luoxiao region because of your choice." Qin Song was confused why. Yi Chun said calmly, "That's because the so-called 4 great immortal sects might end in my hands." Everyone was stunned when they heard that. Then, disbelief filled their eyes. Qin Song thought he had heard it wrong. Yi Chun wanted to destroy the 4 cultivation sects. Su Jiao and the rest in the crowd scoffed. "Isn't he too good at bragging?" How many years had the 4 cultivation sects suppressed the Luoxiao region? Now that it was still standing, how could it be destroyed by just anyone? Moreover, the 4 cultivation sects still had the God Formation Patriarch and the Immortal Ambassador. At that moment, a terrifying sound of wind and thunder surged between heaven and earth. "It's here." Everyone was stunned at first. Then, they seemed to have thought of something. They could not help but be shocked and kept quiet out of fear. Chapter 13:24. At that moment, the city governor of Chaoga City, Xiao Xing, who was suppressed on the ground and could not move, could not help but reveal a look of ecstasy. He looked at Yi Chun as if he was looking at a dead man. "Do you think you're the only one who's a mastery stage, nascent soul cultivator?" Not only did the 4 great immortal sects have mastery stage, nascent soul cultivators, but they also had supreme existences like soul formation patriarchs. "There's no way for you to survive now." However, Yi Chun was unmoved by that. He continued feeding his daughter as if he did not see it. Rumble. A strong wind blew outside the hall, and 2 shocking auras descended. At that moment, everyone could not help but bend their bodies, their faces filled with shock. Under everyone's gaze, 2 old voices slowly walked into the hall. One of them carried an ancient sword and had white hair and a youthful face. The other wore a green robe. The ancient sword sect's Grand Elder and the green spirit sect's sect leader. River Feather recognized the 2 of them at a glance. At that moment, his mind was buzzing as if he had been struck by lightning. "It's over. Brother Yi is finished." Whether it was the ancient sword sect's Grand Elder or the green spirit sect leader, they were both mastery stage nascent soul cultivators, and they had broken through 100 years ago. Compared to his despair, the city governor of Chaoga City, who was suppressed on the ground, was extremely excited. He struggled with all his might against the restriction that Yi Chun had cast on him, but it was useless. The ancient sword sect's Grand Elder, Gu Qiansui, scanned the hall coldly. He paused on Xiao Xing for a few seconds before fixing his gaze on Yi Chun. Even the green spirit sect leader, Yi Ku He, was no exception. Even though there was no aura coming from Yi Chun's body, the 2 of them could still sense the extraordinary aura and deterrence on his body. However, Yi Chun's overly young appearance made the 2 of them feel uncertain. At that moment, Gu Qiansui and Yi Ku He looked at each other at the same time. They could sense a trace of suspicion in each other's eyes. In the end, Gu Qiansui took a step forward and suddenly spoke, shaking the hall. "Are you the one who killed my ancient sword sect's young master?" Hearing his voice, Everyone felt like thunder rumbled in their heads. They could not help but spit blood. Yichin picked up a handkerchief and wiped his mouth. He then lifted his head slowly to look at him and said calmly, "That's right, it's me. The young master of the Qingling sect was also killed by you?" Yikui's expression was icy as he spoke in a cold voice. "Me too." Yichin nodded lightly and looked at the two of them with slight mockery. "You two want to avenge them? I'm afraid a late-stage nascent soul cultivator won't be enough. Go back and tell your divine transformation patriarchs to come here. You think you're qualified to meet a soul formation ancestral patriarch." Gu Qinsue's eyes were cold as he stretched his hand out to grab Yichun. "Follow me back, young man. If you're smart, it's best that you don't fight back. Perhaps you'll suffer less." "Mr. Yi." At that moment, Qin Song and the others couldn't help but shout. To them, Yichun would definitely not be a match for the ancient sword sect's grand elder. Therefore, they were terrified and helpless. "It's over. My Jiang clan is finished." River Feather's body softened, and he slumped onto the ground. Su Jiao and the rest could not help but smirk. What a pity. He already has such a cultivation base at such a young age. He's said to have extraordinary talent, but he doesn't know how to restrain himself. He deserves this. "Brat, I'll skin you alive, pull out your tendons, and refine your soul. I'll make you wish you were dead," the city governor of Chaoga City said with resentment in his eyes. Facing Gu Qinsue's big hand that was coming at him, Yichun said calmly, "I told you that the two of you aren't enough." He used his finger as a saber and slashed it in the air. Slash, in an instant, a saber gleam that was thousands of meters long appeared out of nowhere like a peerless divine saber. It whistled and sliced Gu Qinsue's body and nascent soul in half. Dead silence. The place suddenly fell into dead silence. Countless people stared blankly at the scene. The expression on their faces was still stuck on the scene earlier. The ancient sword sect's grand elder, a mastery stage nascent soul cultivator. Yet he was killed with a single slash. Tethys. At that moment, River Feather, Qin Song, and the rest could not help but widen their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. In the deathly silent hall, everyone only had eyes for the white-haired, black-eyed young man with a calm expression. How is this possible? The Green Spirit sect leader, Yi Kuhi, was shocked. He could not believe this scene. Then, a heavy thought suddenly flashed through his mind. As soon as the thought appeared, he was so scared that he immediately trembled. Divine Lord Soul Formation. Why you're a Divine Lord Soul Formation. The moment that was said, the entire place fell silent. Shock surged through countless people's hearts. Their eyes were filled with fear when they looked at Yichun again. The city governor of Chaoga City was even more shocked. Divine Lord Soul Formation. Qin Song felt his mind buzzing. He stared blankly at Yichun. Mr. Yi is actually a Divine Lord Soul Formation. River Feather, on the other hand, forced a smile. He could not help but recall the first time he met Yichun. He did not believe Yichun when he said that he was at intermediate stage soul formation. It seemed like Yichun really did not lie to him back then. Thinking of this, the doubts in his mind suddenly dissipated. No wonder Brother Yi was able to destroy the Zhang clan in an instant. No wonder Brother Yi still killed Gu Jinghong and Gu Li after knowing their identities. Because this was the prestige that a soul formation perfected cultivator should have. He suddenly shuddered and shouted excitedly, "We're rich. Our Jiang clan is rich. I actually know a divine lord of transformation stage." Su Jiao and the others were dumbstruck. When they came to their senses, all that was left in their hearts was endless regret. That was a soul formation perfected cultivator. If they had even the slightest bit of fawning just now, it would have changed the fate of them and their families. Thump! Under everyone's gaze, the sect leader of the Green Spirit sect, Yi Ku-he, knelt heavily before Yichun. He said in a trembling voice, "I didn't recognize you, Divine Lord. Please forgive me, please forgive me." There was only one Divine Lord of the Divine Transformation Realm, even in the Green Spirit sect. Forgive? Yichun carried his daughter and walked toward him step by step. A mocking smirk appeared at the corner of his lips. How do you want me to forgive you? Seeing his expression, the Qin sect leader's heart sank. He knew that Yichen would not let him go. He could not help but grit his teeth and crush a talisman in his hand. Boom! Following a monstrous explosion, the void exploded. An invisible vortex came with a terrifying suction force, directly sucking him in. Is this a life-saving technique given to you by a soul formation cultivator? Yichen smiled lightly. You can't escape. With a flash, he extended his hand and grabbed at the void. He used the innate chi capturing technique and forcefully destroyed the other party's teleportation power. The Green Spirit sect leader screamed. His body was crushed by the void on the spot. Only his soul was captured by Yichen's hand. Yichen held the other party's soul lightly and was about to perform the soul-searching tactic. At this moment, a loud shout suddenly came from the void. Fellow, please stop. Chapter 1325. As this voice fell, a huge pill river flowed over like a waterfall, covering the heavens and the earth and shaking the surroundings. Upon hearing the old voice, the originally despairing Green Spirit Gate's chief involuntarily revealed a wild joy, as though he had seen his savior. In the eyes of everyone, a red pill river gushed over. Within the red pill river, an old man in a red robe appeared. The old man's long sleeves fluttered in the air. His white eyebrows fluttered in the wind as immortal chi floated around him. Patriarch Azure Spirit, someone exclaimed. The rest of the people were in an uproar. They seemed to have recognized that the person was the only divine transformation realm lord of the Green Spirit sect, Patriarch Green Spirit. Just when everyone thought that the Patriarch of Green Spirit would attack Yichen, he cupped his hands at Yichen and said while smiling, Fellow, let's talk nicely. Don't be rash. Yichen was not surprised to see her. Instead, joy appeared at the corner of his lips. What else do you have to say? I am the ancestor of the Green Spirit sect. I hope you will spare Ku He's life for my sake. Ancestor Azure Spirit smiled and said, My Azure Spirit sect will definitely compensate fellow Taoist later. Yes, I'm willing to compensate you. I'm willing to compensate you. The sect master of the Azure Spirit sect nodded in agreement. It wasn't easy for him to reach his current level of cultivation, and he definitely had hopes of stepping into the deity transformation stage. If he were to die like this, all of his hard work would be for naught. It's not impossible for me to let this person go. Yichen looked at the Azure Spirit sect master soul in his hand and lifted his eyes to look at the Patriarch of Azure Spirit. You have to agree to 3 of my conditions. Fellow Taoist, feel free to speak your mind. Ancestor Azure Spirit nodded with a smile. However, he didn't dare to speak too slowly. After all, people who had lived to such an age were extremely important to karma. Yichen said slowly, Firstly, I want you to submit to me. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked, thinking that they had misheard. The smile on Ancestor Qingling's face gradually froze, and his expression sank. He narrowed his eyes and said, What about the second one? Yichen said again, Secondly, the Qingling sect will offer 1 million spirit stones as a form of forgiveness for this person. 1 million spirit stones? The corners of Ancestor Azure Spirit's mouth twitched slightly, and his gaze became somewhat cold. What about the third? Thirdly, I want to see the immortal envoy of the Sunset Dawn region. Yichen listed 3 conditions in a row. Everyone looked at him in disbelief, thinking that he was crazy. Even if he was a divine lord of the soul formation stage, he shouldn't ask for such an exorbitant price. The smile on Ancestor Green Spirit's face disappeared, and his eyes narrowed into slits. Fellow Taoist, are you sure you want to be so overbearing? Those who obey me shall prosper. Those who oppose me shall perish. Yichen squinted. If you don't obey, not only will this person die today, even you will die too. Good. Ancestor Azure Spirit praised him thrice. With a wave of his long sleeve, a blood river that was nearly 100 feet long immediately appeared behind him. Scalding flames surged within it, directly melting the space around it. Yichen looked at him wryly. Are you sure you want to fight me? I can't guarantee that I'll be able to capture you. Ancestor Azure Spirit sneered. However, if fellow cultivator goo is included, then you'll definitely die today. Rumble. As soon as he finished speaking, a sword gleam tore through the air and landed on the ground like a bolt of lightning during the day. In the end, a black-clothed boy with monstrous sword intent and a lotus throne on his head was revealed. Although the boy's face was only in his teens, his sideburns were white, and his eyes were filled with a terrifying black and white color. The ancient sword sex patriarch's ancient divinity. River Feather subconsciously blurted out when he saw who it was. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Their faces were filled with shock. Another divine lord of the soul formation stage. Someone lowered his voice and said, "Why is Ancestor Azure Spirit so old, but the ancient sword sex patriarch has a baby face?" It said that the ancient sword sex patriarch was forced to reincarnate because of the end of his life. The disciples of the ancient sword sect found his reincarnation and awakened his memories of his previous life in advance. So he maintained his baby face, an insider whispered. However, before he could finish speaking, a gust of wind blew over and directly sliced his entire body into two. This time, the entire place fell silent. No one dared to speak. The patriarch of Azure Spirit looked at the ancient divinity expressionlessly. "Fellow goo, you're a little slow. Cut the crap, do it." The ancient divinity shouted, and 16 strange words shot out from its body. In the end, these 16 strange words turned into a huge golden sword that was over 30 meters long. The body of the huge golden sword was engraved with strange golden runes, and waves of heart-palpitating power were emitted from it. The patriarch of Azure Spirit's pupils constricted slightly. Subsequently, he looked at Yi-chan with a forced smile. "Fellow Yi, it's not too late for you to kneel and surrender now." Yi-chan shook his head lightly, seemingly disappointed. "Forget it. Looks like I can only force that immortal envoy to appear by killing." The moment he finished speaking, a huge golden wheel that was 30 meters tall appeared behind Yi-chan. He turned into a golden rainbow that pierced through heaven and earth and shattered the sky with a punch. The fist gleam was resplendent, illuminating the world. Oh no! At that moment, all the hair on the ancient sword sex patriarch's body stood on end. He could only feel the aura of death assaulting him. Retreat. He instantly wanted to teleport away. However, in the next moment, he was horrified to discover that the space around him was sealed. It was like an iron wall that cannot be broken at all. Bang! At that moment, heaven and earth exploded and space collapsed. Immediately after, the ancient divinity let out a blood-curdling scream as his body exploded from the inside. Even his purple palace could not withstand it and collapsed. No. Following that, an unwilling and horrified roar shook the surroundings. The ancient divinity exploded from head to toe. His body and primordial spirit were completely wiped out, and his soul was completely destroyed. With a single punch, the ancient sword sex patriarch, an early-stage soul formation divine lord, who stood at the peak of the Luoxiao region, died. In an instant, the entire world fell into a dead silence. Everyone's expression turned sluggish. That was a soul formation divine lord, not a cabbage. Before anyone could react, Yi-chan lifted his eyes slightly. His cold gaze eventually landed on the patriarch of Azure Spirit sect. "Fellow Yi, it's a misunderstanding." The patriarch of Azure Spirit sect retreated in shock. He wanted to beg for mercy, but when he saw Yi-chan approaching him step by step, he could not help but kneel heavily on the ground. His voice was extremely sharp. "I'm willing to submit. I'm willing to submit." He was completely scared out of his wits. Where did this fiend come from? Even that ferocious person from a while ago was not as terrifying as this person before him. Yi-chan said, "Open your mind and let me plant a primordial spirit imprint." The patriarch of Azure Spirit sect gritted his teeth and finally opened his mind. Suddenly, he felt an imprint in his mind, as if a time bomb had been planted. Chapter 1326. Now, take me to that immortal envoy. Yichen lifted him up and shot out after saying that, leaving the people who were still stunned on the spot. Fellow Taoist, no, you can't go. The old ancestor of the Green Spirit sect struggled in fear. If you go, we will all die. The immortal emissary is not something you can imagine. Why? Yichen scoffed as if he was mocking. Could it be that this immortal ambassador is really an immortal who has descended to the mortal world? Fellow Taoist, since you have such terrifying cultivation, Ancestor Qing Ling smiled bitterly and said, you must not be an ordinary person in the firmament purple world. Why don't you know about me? He seemed to have thought of something after saying that, and his expression changed suddenly. His eyes were filled with shock when he looked at Yichen again. Why, you're not from the purple world? Yichen scoffed coldly. With a thought, he activated the imprint that was planted deep in his primordial spirit. Ancestor Azure Spirit screamed in pain. You have to understand the situation. Right now, your life and death are in my hands. If you don't want your 1,000 years of cultivation to go down the drain, then be more honest with me. Yichen's eyes turned slightly cold. I'll ask you a question now, and you'll answer it accordingly. Don't hide anything. Yes, yes. Ancestor Azure Spirit's face was drenched in cold sweat. Yichen pondered for a while and said, is there an existence called the Immortal Palace in the purple world? The patriarch of Green Spirit's pupils constricted violently. He seemed to be hesitating. When he saw Yichen's gaze turn cold, he immediately nodded and said, fellow, the Immortal Palace you mentioned is in the All-Heaven region. As soon as he said that, tens of thousands of gleams surged in Yichen's eyes. As expected, I told you that there's nothing wrong with the formation that you Dongli left behind. It won't teleport us somewhere else. Old Ancestor Clear Spirit gave him a look and carefully said, Tao friend, the people of this world all believe that our 4 great sects are high above existences. Little do they know that above us is Immortal Palace. An Immortal Palace is the true master of blue-purple world. Immortal Palace has been established for countless years. Rumor has it that it was a sect established by an immortal from outside this region, claiming to be carrying out an immortal's decree to patrol in place of the heavens. Immortals descended? Yichen chuckled softly when he heard that, as if he was disdainful. He was once the lord of the celestial realm, not to mention the fact that the heavenly law forbade celestials from descending to the mortal realm. Even if there were those who defied the laws of heaven and wanted to descend to the lower realm, they could only let the lower realm prepare to receive their corporeal bodies. Their true bodies could not descend to the lower realm at all. Otherwise, the lower realm would not be able to withstand the power of the laws of their true bodies and would instantly collapse. Moreover, the azure purple world could only be considered a small world in the entire universe. It was just a drop in the ocean. Why would a celestial spend so much to descend? That was why this so-called Immortal Palace might have established a connection with a cultivation world sect in the middle 1,000 realms. Yichen could not help but glance at the patriarch of Green Spirit as he thought to this point. He said, what's the highest cultivation base in the Immortal Palace? Above the soul formation stage? Fellow cultivator, to tell you the truth, ever since we started cultivating, we have never seen anyone above the soul formation stage. Ancestor Green Spirit didn't dare to hide anything. He said word by word, even the Immortal Palace emissary guarding my Luoxiao region is only at the mid-stage of soul formation, not above the soul formation stage. Yichen frowned in disbelief. Then he said, then why did the Immortal Palace send immortal emissaries to guard your Luoxiao region and the other regions? That's just because the Immortal Palace is worried about us. The Patriarch of Green Spirit smiled bitterly. The Immortal Palace is worried that we won't be restrained and will rebel. Therefore, they sent 3 immortal emissaries to guard the 3 regions and built the Tower of Heaven. The immortal emissaries usually live in the Tower of Heaven, and the Tower of Heaven leads directly to the All-Heaven region. At this point, he added, the Immortal Palace has 5 emissaries: wind, fire, thunder, and rain. The one guarding my Luoxiao region is the Thunder Immortal Emissary. Thunder immortal emissary. Yi Chen scoffed when he heard that. A mere mid-stage soul formation cultivator who doesn't comprehend the laws of heaven and earth, much less the laws of thunder, is worthy of being called the Thunder Immortal Emissary. The one guarding the mystic yang region is the Fire Immortal Emissary, and the one guarding the true sky region is the Wind Immortal Emissary. The Patriarch of Green Spirit explained patiently. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and said, "However, the Wind Immortal Emissary died a few days ago. Because of this, many sects in the True Sky region tried to rebel and establish their own region. In the end, they were suppressed." The Wind Immortal Emissary? Yi Chun was stunned. Then he could not help but recall the Immortal Palace Emissary that he had killed in the ancient desolate realm. He secretly guessed that this person was the Wind Immortal Emissary. One last question. Yi Chun took a deep breath in and looked at the Patriarch of Green Spirit calmly. "I heard that there will be a wedding in the All-Heaven region in 7 days. What's going on?" "Fellow cultivator." The Patriarch of Green Spirit immediately said, "It's said that the young great figure from the Immortal Palace is about to hold a dual cultivation ceremony with a female cultivator. Therefore, the Immortal Palace has sent out an invitation for the 3 regions to attend the ceremony." "Female cultivator?" Yi Chen's eyes lit up when he heard that. He said hurriedly, "What's the female cultivator's name?" "I'm not sure about that." The Patriarch of Green Spirit shook his head and said, "In fact, there's very little news about this woman in the outside world. It seems that the Immortal Palace did it on purpose. We only found out about this person when we suddenly received an order from the Immortal Emissary. Looks like the breakthrough lies with this Thunder Immortal Emissary." Yi Chen's eyes flickered a few times. Then his mouth moved slightly, and the bones in his body exploded. Then, under the Patriarch of Green Spirit's dumbfounded expression, his appearance and temperament changed drastically. He had actually turned into the ancient sword sect's patriarch, ancient divinity. Whether it was his appearance, temperament, or even cultivation base, they were exactly the same as the dead ancient divinity. If he was not still holding his daughter, Meng Meng, in his arms, the Patriarch of Green Spirit would even suspect that the ancient divinity had been resurrected. "Fellow, why you?" The Patriarch of Green Spirit was extremely shocked. He was also capable of transformation techniques, but they were mostly illusions and cover-ups. After all, if he wanted to truly transform into another person, he would have to change the structure of his body. Even a soul formation cultivator wouldn't be able to do this. However, Yi Chen could do it. He was not the only one. Even Meng Meng, who was in Yi Chen's arms, looked at him with her eyes wide. "Daddy?" Yi Chen said calmly, "From now on, I'm the ancient sword sect's patriarch, ancient divinity. When you see that immortal emissary, listen to my orders." "All right." The Patriarch of Green Spirit could only suppress the shock in his heart and nod heavily. "Let's go." Yi Chen waved his sleeve and turned into 2 green arcs that shot into the sky under the Patriarch of Green Spirit's lead. An hour later, the 2 of them stepped into the depths of the Cloud Dream mountain range. In the middle of a verdant mountain range, there was a black pillar that reached the sky. The pillar was very huge. Even the surrounding mountains seemed incomparably small in front of it. The pillar directly pierced into the clouds, and one could not see the end of it. It was daunting. The 2 green arcs landed on a mountain peak, less than 5 kilometers away from the black pillar. Subsequently, Yi Chen and the Patriarch of Green Spirit appeared. End of this chapter. Chapter 13:27. The Patriarch of Green Spirit raised his eyes and took a deep breath in. He looked at the black pillar in the distance. "Fellow, that's the heaven-reaching tower." In reality, Yi Chen had already seen it from 5 kilometers away, even without his reminder. A hint of surprise flashed through his eyes when he saw such a strange building. He was not in a hurry to extend his divine consciousness. Instead, he turned around and asked, "Does the Thunder Immortal Envoy live inside?" "That's right." The Patriarch of Green Spirit nodded slightly and said, "The Immortal Envoy has always been living in the heaven-reaching tower. If there's nothing urgent, he won't leave easily." Looks like this thunder immortal envoy cultivates lightning techniques. Yi Chen lifted his head to look at the black pillar that pierced the clouds. He said while smiling, "This pillar is engraved with the lightning summoning rune. It can draw the lightning in the air to refine the body and condense lightning crystals at the same time." "Fellow, you're right." The Patriarch of Green Spirit looked at him in surprise and explained, "Even the Divine Thunder sect in the Nirvana region can't compare to the immortal envoy's attainments in lightning techniques." "Let's go," Yi Chen said. Just as he was about to approach the heaven-reaching tower, he suddenly looked behind him as if he had sensed something. From there, two rays of light, one black and one red, shot over. At the same time, a slightly cold voice sounded, "Fellow Gu, fellow Yi, I didn't expect the two of you to be faster than us." As soon as the voice fell, a man and a woman appeared. The man's face was old, and his entire body was filled with dense yin energy. Compared to him, the woman was only 16 or 18 years old. Her beautiful eyes were filled with affection, and every frown and smile captivated one's heart. Both of them were at beginner stage God transformation stage. Before Yi Chen could speak, the Patriarch of Green Spirit smiled calmly and said, "So it's fellow Qianhuan from the Union sect and fellow Luo from the Heavenly Ghost sect." He was worried that Yi Chen would be exposed because he did not know the two of them. Therefore, he took the initiative to introduce them to Yi Chen. He, Fairy Qianhuan from the Union sect, covered her mouth and giggled. She looked at the Patriarch of Green Spirit with charming eyes. "Fellow Yi, I heard that the young master of the Green Spirit sect died in Chaoga City. Is that true? I also heard that Brother Gu's disciple died in Chaoga City." The Patriarch of the Heavenly Ghost sect looked at Yi Chen. "It's just a rumor," Yi Chen said calmly. "Our four sects are suppressing the Sunset region. Who dares to go against us?" The Heavenly Ghost sect's Patriarch nodded slightly. "That's true. It seems that the information was wrong." Ancestor Qingling's gaze flickered slightly, and he took the lead to ask, "May I know why fellow Taoist Qianhuan and fellow Taoist Luo suddenly came here?" He was feeling rather uneasy. As soon as Yi Chen's identity was exposed, the two of them would be besieged by the two people before them and the immortal ambassador. "Ha ha!" Fairy Thousand Illusions giggled and said, "The celestial emissary just sent a message saying that a mysterious elite has broken into the Tower of Babel, so she summoned us here." She looked at the duo in surprise after saying that. What? Could it be that fellow Taoist Yi and fellow Taoist Gu didn't receive the immortal envoy's decree? A mysterious powerhouse broke in a sky-split tower? An undetectable gleam flashed through Yi Chen's eyes. He said calmly, "We didn't receive it. The reason why we're here is to discuss the details of the All-Heaven region's wedding with the celestial emissary." He suspected that the mysterious powerhouse was Yi Wushuang and Xiao He. After all, he had secretly ordered the two of them to search for the whereabouts of the sky-split tower. "I see. Let's go then." The Heavenly Ghost sect's Patriarch nodded slightly. With a flash, he shot towards the sky-split tower first. On the other hand, Fairy Thousand Illusions' beautiful eyes swept across the cute little girl in Yi Chen's embrace. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. "Ah, which family is this little girl from? She's so beautiful." After saying that, she took a few steps forward and reached out to touch the little girl. However, the little girl dodged her. At that moment, the Patriarch of Green Spirit's heart sank. However, he heard Yi Chen say, while smiling, "This is the new disciple I took in from Chaoga City. I saw that her bones are amazing and her talent isn't bad, so I loved her. I didn't expect that the stone-hearted fellow Taoist, Gu, would have such a gentle side." The former giggled and said, "Fellow Taoist Gu, I like this girl very much. Why don't you give her to me? I'm willing to exchange 10 gold core stage virgins for her." As soon as these words came out, Ancestor Azure Spirit was shocked. 10 golden core female cultivators? This was too generous. Yi Chen's gaze turned slightly cold. Subsequently, he shook his head and said while smiling, "You must be joking, Fairy Thousand Illusions. It wasn't easy for me to find a successor. I won't give up no matter what." "What a pity," Fairy Thousand Illusions seemed to shake her head regretfully. A strange light flashed in her eyes, but then it quietly disappeared. Yi-Chen saw all of her changes. Yi-Chen secretly sneered. This lady must have discovered something, but he was not afraid. As long as she dared to say it, Yi-Chen could kill her instantly. Gentlemen, don't be late. Let's go. Ancestor Azure Spirit smiled. He knew that there might be too many changes if he continued talking. He ended the topic immediately and shot toward the Tong Tian Tower with Yi-Chen. As soon as the two of them approached within a kilometer radius of the Tong Tian Tower, they heard the sounds of intense battle coming from the forest below. There were also waves of ferocious beast roars. Boom! Following an earth-shattering explosion, surging sword intent crisscrossed with lightning, destroying everything within a kilometer. Two figures were the first to appear on the ground when the terrifying ripples dissipated. A young man in a purple robe, bathed in lightning, looked at a white-clothed young man who was less than 300 meters away from him with a bloodthirsty gaze. The white-clothed young man's sleeves fluttered in the wind. His expression was cold, and his entire body seemed to have transformed into the most terrifying sword in the world. On the other side, there was a black water dragon that was more than 20 meters long, fighting intensely with the heavenly ghost sex patriarch. However, the black water dragon seemed to be injured and was no match for the heavenly ghost sex patriarch. It's these two brats. Yi-Chen's eyes focused. Clearly, he did not expect Yu Wushuang and Xiao He to find the Tong Tian Tower before him. Subsequently, his gaze landed on the purple-robed young man, and he narrowed his eyes. Intermediate stage God transformation. Is he the Thunder Immortal Envoy? Sir. At the same time, the Ancestor Azure Spirit and the Thousand Illusion Fairy were also shocked. They seemed to be in disbelief as they watched this scene. Who exactly are you? Seeing the arrival of the Ancestor Azure Spirit and the rest, the purple-robed young man stared at Yu Wushuang with a gloomy gaze and said coldly, "Why have I never seen you before?" Earlier, when he was in closed-door cultivation, he suddenly sensed Yu Wushuang, who was investigating the Tong Tian Tower, and the two of them fought. As the Thunder Immortal Envoy who guarded the Luo Xia region, he thought that his cultivation base was the strongest in the Luo Xia region. Neither the Ancestor Azure Spirit nor the Ancient Sword Sex Patriarch were his match. However, he was no match for this white-clothed young man who was only 17 or 18 years old. Moreover, he had never heard of the other party's comprehension of Sword Dao. If the Heavenly Ghost Sex Patriarch had not arrived in time, he would have died here today. End of this chapter. Chapter 1328. In reality, he was not the only one. Even the Heavenly Ghost Sex Patriarch, the Patriarch of Green Spirit, and the rest did not recognize Yi Wushuang and Xiao He at all. Only the Patriarch of Green Spirit seemed to have thought of something. He glanced at Yi-Chen without batting an eyelid. Shock flashed through his eyes. "You want to know who I am?" Yi Wushuang looked at him calmly. "Sure, take a strike from me. If you don't die, I'll tell you. You're courting death." The purple-robed young man's gaze turned cold as he said, "I'll know everything after I capture you and use the soul-searching tactic." He suddenly looked at Yi-Chen and the rest after saying that, "Ancient Sword Sex Patriarch, I order the three of you to help me capture this brat. There will be a great reward after this." "All right." Before Yi-Chen could speak, Fairy Qianhuan's face lit up. Subsequently, she turned into a long rainbow and charged at Yi Wushuang. Seeing that Yi-Chen and Fairy Qianhuan did not move, the purple-robed young man shouted immediately, "Ancient Sword Sex Patriarch, what are the two of you waiting for? Could it be that the two of you want to disobey my orders?" "Don't panic, Master Envoy. We'll help you now." Yi-Chen smiled and took a step forward. He landed before Fairy Qianhuan directly, and the Patriarch of Green Spirit followed closely behind. The purple-robed young man urged again, "Why aren't you attacking?" "Attack!" Yi-Chen glanced at the Patriarch of Green Spirit and turned around abruptly. He pointed his finger like a blade, and a resplendent saber gleam condensed. It tore through the air and slashed at the former. At that moment, the Patriarch of Green Spirit and Fairy Qianhuan each took out their spirit treasures and attacked the purple-robed young man with killing intent on their faces. Sizzle. As blood sprayed, an arm was thrown into the air. The purple-robed young man was sent flying. He spat blood and looked at Yi Chun and the other two furiously. He had never expected that the three pieces of trash who used to be so respectful to him would dare to betray him. Are you guys trying to rebel? This sudden scene also shocked Yi Wushuang and the heavenly ghost sex patriarch who was fighting Xiao He. The heavenly ghost sex patriarch shouted, "Fellow Yi, fellow Qinhuan, fellow Gu, are you guys crazy?" The immortal envoy was high and mighty. "Fellow Taoist Gu?" Yi Chen could not help but scoff when he heard that. Then he said, "Look at who I am." Under their gazes, Yi Chen's face and body changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. He turned from an ancient divinity to an unfamiliar face. "Who are you?" At that moment, the heavenly ghost sect and the purple-robed young man were shocked. They glared at Yi Chun. "Who am I?" Yi Chun chuckled softly and subsequently looked at Yi Wushuang and Xiao He. "One of them calls me brother, while the other calls me master." As soon as these words were spoken, the entire place fell silent. The most shocked person was none other than the purple-robed young man. He knew Yi Wushuang's ability, and now another big brother had appeared. "Big brother." Yi Wushuang walked over slowly as a smile appeared on his cold face. "I wanted to capture this person and bring him back to you. I didn't expect you to come so soon." "It's all right." Yi Chen shook his head. Subsequently, he could not help but lift his head to look at the Hahuan sex patriarch, Thousand Illusion Fairy, who was next to the patriarch of Azure Spirit. "I can understand why the patriarch of Green Spirit helped me under my coercion." At this point, a hint of confusion flashed through his eyes. "What I'm curious about is, you've clearly seen through my identity, so why are you still helping me?" "Because you're the person that Master mentioned." Thousand Illusion Fairy smiled slightly. Her smile was a little strange. "Master?" Yi Chen could not help but frown. Then, under everyone's gaze, Thousand Illusion Fairy slowly opened her mouth, revealing two fangs at the corner of her mouth. Seeing this, the heavenly ghost sex patriarch's eyes were filled with disbelief. Thousand Illusion Fairy. Even the patriarch of Green Spirit was shocked. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly looked at Thousand Illusion Fairy. "Why, you were bitten by that ferocious person." Even the purple-robed young man's expression changed. Thousand Illusion Fairy said respectfully, "Ferocious person? Master gave me the power of eternal life and an ageless appearance. In my heart, he's no different from a god." Yi Chen looked at him steadily. "The person who bit you is a man in a black dragon robe. Is he a zombie?" "That's right." Thousand Illusion Fairy said, without hiding anything. "Master is exactly as you said. Before he left, he told me that if I meet you, I can lend you a hand at a critical moment." He really won. Even though Yi Chun was mentally prepared, he could not help but be shocked when he heard that. It caused a huge commotion in the Forbidden Sea and then disappeared mysteriously. He did not expect that he would come to the purple world before him. Thinking to this point, he could not help but think of the coffin man that the Qin family's patriarch, Qin Tsang, had mentioned before. This person must have one. At this moment, an extremely shocked voice suddenly came from the side. I know. You're the rebels from the ancient, desolate realm." The purple-robed young man stared fixedly at Yi Chun and the rest. The fear on his face was extremely intense. At the next moment, he formed a seal with his right hand and slapped forward. Boom! Amidst the loud noise, a black rift appeared in the air and swept towards him at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, the purple-robed man's figure moved and sped towards the black rift, as if he wanted to escape. He knew very well that he was no match for Yi Chun. This was because the Immortal Palace had already sent an order that the Wind Immortal Envoy had died in the ancient desolate realm. This sudden scene shocked the Patriarch of Azure Spirit. "Fellow, this is the Immortal Palace's secret technique. We can't let him escape back to the Immortal Palace." "Do you think you can escape?" A mocking smirk appeared at the corner of Yi Chen's lips. Subsequently, he extended his hand. The entire sky seemed to be covered by an invisible hand. Spin! The purple-robed young man stepped into the rift and roared with all his might, wanting to speed up the activation of the secret technique. However, at this moment, An unbelievable suction force came from behind him. As soon as the suction force appeared, the purple-robed young man felt as if his soul was about to be sucked out of his body. "No!" he roared and resisted with all his might. "Come back." A thought-provoking smile appeared at the corner of Yi Chen's lips. He curled his fingers and forcefully grabbed the purple-robed young man. Without waiting for him to struggle, Yi Chen pointed at the former's dantian and instantly crippled his cultivation base. Then, he forcefully planted a restriction on his body. In just a few breaths of time, the extremely powerful Lord Immortal Envoy in the eyes of the Patriarch of Azure Spirit, and the rest was suppressed by Yi Chen. Too powerful. The Patriarch of Azure Spirit gasped. The Heavenly Ghost Sex Patriarch was horrified. At that moment, Yi Chen's cold gaze landed on him. The Heavenly Ghost Sex Patriarch shuddered and knelt heavily on the ground. "Senior, I'm willing to surrender. I'm willing to surrender." End of this chapter. Chapter 1329. At the highest point of the Tower of Babel stood a purple gold palace. It was engraved with mysterious lightning patterns, faintly emitting a terrifying power. Yi Chen sat on the high platform and looked expressionlessly at the Thunder Immortal Envoy who was suppressed on the ground. Meanwhile, Yi Wuxuang, the Patriarch of Green Spirit, and the rest stood around him. There was also the Heavenly Ghost Sex Patriarch who took the initiative to let Yi Chen imprint his primordial spirit. "Foolish rebel from the lower realm, you better let me go." The Thunder Immortal Envoy glared at Yi Chen with hatred in his eyes. "Otherwise, when the powerhouses from the Immortal Palace descend, you'll beg for death." He did not expect Yi Chen to be a rebel from the ancient desolate realm. Moreover, his cultivation base was even more terrifying than the decree from the Immortal Palace. Before this, he was one of the 5 immortal envoys from the Immortal Palace. He was at the soul formation stage and suppressed everything in the Sunset region. Now, Yi Chen had destroyed his cultivation base and planted a restriction on his body. How could he not be angry? Apart from being angry, there was also a hint of fear. "You're about to die, and you still dare to talk big." Blackill let out a sinister laugh, walked straight over and slapped him across the face, directly causing half of his face to cave in. Yi Chen raised his hand to stop Xiao He. He looked down at the Thunder Immortal Envoy. "You're just an ant to me now. If you don't want to die, cooperate with me. Maybe I can give you a chance to reincarnate." Tui, the Thunder Immortal Envoy, seemed to have heard something funny. He sneered. "Now that I've fallen into the hands of a rebel like you, I admit that I'm not as good as you. However, don't even think about making me betray the Immortal Palace." "Is that so?" Yi Chen gave a short response and glanced at Xiao He. Xiao He immediately understood. He walked over and twisted the Thunder Immortal Envoy's remaining arm. "Are you going to talk or not?" "Ah." The Thunder Immortal Envoy immediately let out a miserable cry, but he still showed no signs of letting go. "Still not talking?" Xiao He's eyes turned cold. He lifted the Thunder Immortal Envoy into the air and threw him to the ground. Bang! The Thunder Immortal Envoy's legs directly shattered the ground. They were deeply embedded into the ground, revealing scarlet blood. However, the latter still had a ruthless look on his face. Seeing this scene, Little Black was also a little angry. At this time, Fairy Thousand Illusion suddenly took a step forward and said, "Sir Yi, it's useless." They have been adopted by Immortal Palace since they were young, and their minds have been instilled with the idea of loyalty to Immortal Palace. It is deeply ingrained into their souls, so there is no way they will betray us. So they've been brainwashed. Realization flashed through Yi Chen's eyes when he heard that. He then shook his head and said, "I wanted to give you a chance. Since that's the case, don't blame me." The moment he said this, the Thunder Celestial Messenger seemed to realize something. His expression suddenly changed, and he quickly said, "What do you want to do?" Yi Chen extended his hand and grabbed him from afar. Subsequently, he pointed at his glabella and forcefully pulled his primordial spirit out. "What are you doing?" Thunder Immortal Envoy's primordial spirit was terrified. If Yi Chen were to torture him, he might still be confident because he knew that the more Yi Chen did that, the more it meant that he would not die. "I once learned a divinity. This divinity is called the three-hell soul refining method. Yichun held his primordial spirit gently and said calmly, "This divinity can refine the spirituality of your primordial spirit, and the memories in your mind will turn into the purest energy for me to absorb." With that, 2 balls of golden flames immediately jumped in his eyes. In an instant, the 2 balls of golden flames shot out his eyes and tightly wrapped around Thunder Immortal Envoy's primordial spirit like 2 fluorescent lights. "What is this?" Thunder Immortal Envoy immediately felt an incomparable burning sensation coming from his primordial spirit, as if his soul was about to scatter. He hurriedly said, "Stop, stop, I'll speak." Whoosh! Yichun was not in a hurry to retract the 2 balls of golden flames. He looked at the former, who was extremely dispirited, and said, "First, what's the name of the female cultivator in the upcoming wedding of your immortal palace?" "Ah!" Thunder Immortal Envoy screamed. "Her surname is Su, and her name is Yuhan." Boom! Almost at that moment, a surging killing intent surged out of Yichun's body. The power almost collapsed Thunder Immortal Envoy's primordial spirit. Plop, plop, plop. At the same time, be it the Patriarch of Green Spirit or the Heavenly Ghost sect, they were all suppressed to the ground by this might. They were extremely shocked. A moment later, the killing intent disappeared. A slightly hoarse and excited voice slowly came from Yichun's mouth. "It really is Yuhan." Even Yu Wushuang, who was next to him, was extremely excited. "Brother, it's really sister-in-law." Xiaohei's eyes were slightly red. He knew Yuhan's position in Yichun's heart the best. In order to find his mistress, the latter had rushed from Earth to the ancient desolate realm, and then from the ancient desolate realm to the violet world. Following Yi Wushuang's words, Thunder Immortal Envoy looked at Yichun in disbelief. "What did you say? The Thunder Immortal Envoy is your woman?" Yichun's eyes locked onto him, and he seemed to be extremely surprised. "You said that Yuhan is the Thunder Immortal Envoy of your immortal palace?" Thunder Immortal Envoy's eyes flickered a few times, and he seemed to be conflicted. "You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit." Yichun scoffed and activated the 3-hell soul refining method again. I'll tell you," Thunder Immortal Envoy screamed, and said in an extremely sharp voice, "That's right. Fairy Su is the Reign Immortal Envoy of the Immortal Palace's 5 Immortal Envoys." "How did Yuhan become the Reign Immortal Envoy of your Immortal Palace?" Yichun narrowed his eyes and asked again. "I don't know." Thunder Immortal Envoy said with a terrified expression, "The Immortal Palace's 5 Immortal Envoys have been nurtured by the Immortal Palace since they were young. It turned out that the Reign Immortal Envoy was a man. Later on, Fairy Su suddenly appeared in the Immortal Palace and reigned the Thunder Immortal Envoy, so she became the new Reign Immortal Envoy." "When did Yuhan appear in your Immortal Palace? Who brought her to the Immortal Palace?" Hearing that, Thunder Immortal Envoy said, "She appeared in the Immortal Palace about 2 years ago. However, we really don't know about her background." At this point, he seemed to have thought of something and added, "However, Fairy Su seems to be related to the Master of the Immortal Palace. That's why we don't dare to offend Fairy Su in the Immortal Palace." "The Master of the Immortal Palace?" Yichun frowned. At this moment, the Qingling sect's patriarch stepped forward and explained, "Fellow, there are a total of 5 halls in the Immortal Palace, namely Wind, Fire, Thunder, and Rain. Each hall has a hall master with unfathomable strength, and the 5 halls are all under the jurisdiction of the Master of the Immortal Palace." "I see." Yichun's eyes flashed indiscernibly when he heard that. The 5 halls of the Immortal Palace had a Master of the Immortal Palace, 5 hall masters, and 5 envoys. Even the envoys were at mid-soul formation stage. What cultivation level was the hall master at? And the Master of the Immortal Palace? Late soul formation stage? Or great perfection soul formation stage? End of this chapter. Chapter 1330. Yichun could not help but look at Lei Immortal Representative's primordial spirit as he thought to this point. He said with a trembling voice, "Before Yuhan separated from me, she she was already pregnant. Now that almost 2 years have passed, can she? Before this, he cared about Su Yuhan the most. Now that he knew that Su Yuhan was fine, he was relieved. Then he thought of his child, a boy. Before this, he had already learned from Yuan, second uncle, and the rest that Su Yuhan was carrying a boy. 2 years had passed. Logically speaking, the child should have been born, right? Perhaps they were already 1 year old. He subconsciously hugged his daughter, who was sleeping soundly in his arms. He was very nervous. He was Yi-Chen's second child in this world. As soon as he was done speaking, even Yu Wushuang and Xiao He could not help but look at the Thunder Immortal Envoy. There was anxiety in their eyes. The Thunder Celestial Messenger revealed a hesitant expression. Yi-Chen's heart sank when he saw that. He shouted immediately, "What happened to my child?" He was afraid of hearing any negative news from the former's mouth. Even if it was just a little, it was hard for him to bear. Seeing that Yi-Chan was about to use the three-hell soul refining method, the Thunder Immortal Envoy's primordial spirit trembled violently. He immediately said, "Your child hasn't been born yet." "Impossible," Xiaohe interrupted. "Mistress has been separated from us for almost 2 years. How could she be pregnant for another 2 years? Thunder Immortal Envoy hurriedly said, "When Fairy Su first came to my immortal palace, she was already pregnant. However, she has been pregnant all this time. Her stomach is getting bigger day by day, but there is no sign of childbirth." He was afraid that Yi-Chun and the rest would not believe him at the end of his sentence. He looked terrified. "I'm telling the truth, still not being honest." Black's eyes suddenly turned cold. Yi-Chun waved his hand to stop him. Instead, he revealed a smile that did not know whether to laugh or cry. "So, Yuhan is pregnant with Neza because of me. Normally, a woman would give birth after 10 months of pregnancy. Of course, this was not fixed. There were premature and late births. However, she had been pregnant for 2 years, which meant that she had not given birth after 24 months. If this happened on Earth, it would definitely cause a national sensation. However, it seemed too normal to Yi-Chun. Before he parted with Su Yuhan, he had taught her how to cultivate. It was difficult for cultivators to produce offspring with each other. Even if it was pregnant with life, it couldn't be speculated with common sense. The fetus would have self-consciousness in the mother's womb. They knew when they should be born and when they shouldn't be born. Neza, Xiaohe didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This little bastard, how can he defile his mother like this? Yi-Chen clenched his teeth slightly and said angrily, "When I see you, I'll spank your butt." Thinking about this, he took a deep breath and calmly looked at the Thunder Immortal Messenger. "What about my little brother, Yixing? Also, what about the girl named Qian and the crazy Taoist who were caught by you?" "I don't know about that." Thunder Immortal Envoy bitterly smiled. "Sir, I am just an emissary of the Immortal Palace. In the eyes of outsiders, we might be incomparably glorious, but in the end, we are just dogs raised by the Immortal Palace. The secrets we can come into contact with are few and far between." Seeing that his expression didn't look like he was faking it, Yi-Chan pondered for a moment and said, "Who wants to marry my woman?" It was impossible for Su Yuhan to betray him. Yi-Chan had no doubt about the former's loyalty. Otherwise, Su Yuhan would not have waited for him bitterly during the 5 years that he had disappeared. The only explanation was that Su Yuhan was forced. Otherwise, why would she agree to it with her personality? He really wanted to know who was so bold as to covet his woman. The Thunder Immortal Envoy's expression changed slightly. Then, he bitterly smiled and said, "It's the Immortal Palace's Master Qi Huang." "Who is Qi Huang?" Yi-Chen asked. "Sir." The Heavenly Ghost Sex Patriarch stepped forward with a face full of eagerness. "Qi Huang is the son of the Immortal Palace's master, Qi Daolin. He's also the Immortal Palace's #1 genius." Before he could finish, he was interrupted by the Patriarch of Azure Spirit. "Rumor has it that this child has a mutated lightning spiritual root. He used less than 1,000 years to cultivate to the intermediate stage, soul formation stage. He's known as the #1 genius in the purple world." The Heavenly Ghost Sex Patriarch could not help but be angered to death when he saw this. He gritted his teeth and looked at the Patriarch of Azure Spirit, thinking to himself, "You old man, I used to say that you were cold and aloof, but now you're like a dog fighting for favor with me." After the patriarch of Azure Spirit finished speaking, he gave the former an extremely proud look. "Little guy, when I was still a boy alchemist, I was already proficient in this. Otherwise, how could I have achieved what I have today? The son of the Immortal Palace's master?" Yichin could not help but smirk coldly. "A mere intermediate stage, soul formation stage dares to covet my woman. Not bad. Sir, you can't underestimate this person." The Heavenly Ghost sect quickly seized this opportunity to curry favor. At this moment, a loud voice exploded in his ear. "Sir, although this Qi Huang is at the intermediate stage soul formation stage, no cultivator of the same level is his match." It said that even the 4 intermediate stage soul formation emissaries of wind, fire, thunder, and lightning are no match for him. It was the patriarch of Azure Spirit. The Heavenly Ghost sect's patriarch was on the verge of vomiting blood. The moment that was said, Yi Wu Shuang, who was originally calm, narrowed his eyes. He could not help but look at Yi Chun and say, "Big brother, this person can suppress 4 intermediate stage soul formation stage cultivators. I'm afraid he's not ordinary. His combat strength is equivalent to a late-stage soul formation stage." Yi Chun smiled lightly and looked at Yi Wushuang subsequently. "It's not difficult for me to kill this person. Can you handle him?" Based on the Patriarch of Azure Spirit's explanation, his current opponents were probably the 5 Palace Masters and the Master of the Immortal Palace. As for the others, they were no match for him. Yi Wushuang pondered seriously for a few seconds before saying, "I can't kill him within 100 moves, but after 100 moves, he'll definitely die." As soon as he said that, the Patriarch of Azure Spirit and the rest were so shocked that they almost cried out. "Do you have to be so arrogant?" Yi Chun, on the other hand, nodded lightly. After Wushuang had a fortuitous encounter in the Forbidden Sea, his combat strength was now superior to those at the same level. However, if he wanted to fight a late-stage soul formation stage cultivator, it would depend on how many trump cards the other party had. After all, he was the incarnation of the Sword Spirit. He did not cultivate true origin energy or true energy. He walked the path of the Sword Dao and relied purely on sword intent. The Sword Dao was about charging forward and being unyielding. Of course, the disadvantage was that it was easy to break. Thinking to this point, Yi Chen looked at the Thunder Immortal Envoy again and said, "One last question. Where did the man with the zombie physique go a few days ago?" After saying that, he looked at the Hahuan sect's patriarch, Thousand Illusion Fairy, who had never spoken. As Ying's servant, this person must know some of Ying's whereabouts. The Thunder Immortal Envoy was stunned at first. Then he seemed to have thought of something and said, "This person is very lawless. He plundered all the way from the Luo Xia region, and the 3 regions couldn't stop him at all." End of this chapter. Chapter 1331. Hearing his words, the corners of the Patriarch of Green Spirit and the Heavenly Ghost sect's patriarch's mouths twitched slightly. Clearly, they hated Ying. They would never forget that day when that guy came to challenge their sections. They would either be destroyed or obediently hand over all sorts of medicinal pills and spirit herbs. The 4 great immortal sects had been kicked by him. At first, they were a little unconvinced. However, after Ying made a move, the 4 great sects could only admit defeat. Yi Chan said in surprise, "Why did he plunder? After all, Ying was a zombie. He was an existence that was born and nurtured by nature. He did not need medicinal pills or medicinal herbs." Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. Could it be that he gave it to his avatar to use? As if to verify his guess, the Thunder Immortal Envoy said, "This person was carrying a black coffin on his back. Every time, he would throw all the spirit stones and medicinal pills he plundered into the coffin." At this point, his expression was a little strange, and there seemed to be someone talking to him in the coffin. There were even sounds of quarreling. As expected, Yi Chen's eyes narrowed when he heard that. It seemed like the one in Ying's black coffin was his avatar. However, the product of the 2 emperors' 3 pure ones seemed to have a disagreement. To put it bluntly, the evil body and the avatar refused to submit to each other. At this moment, The heavenly ghost sex patriarch smiled bitterly and said, "That's not all. That savage even brought a group of powerhouses to plunder 3 regions." A group of powerhouses? Yi Chen was stunned at first. Then he narrowed his eyes and said, "It seems like these people are the Emperor's throne powerhouses who awakened from the Forbidden Sea." Thinking to this point, he could not help but ask, what happened after that? The Thunder Immortal Envoy said, "Not only did this person plunder 3 regions, he even brought people to our All-Heaven region to plunder. In the end, he forced our Immortal Palace to take action." He took a deep breath in and said, "At that time, our Immortal Palace sent 3 late-stage Soul Formation Palace Masters, but he killed 2 of them in a row. The other one even had his blood sucked dry and turned into a slave. He's become stronger again." Yi Wushuang's eyes narrowed. Yi Chun said seriously, "After killing 2 late-stage Soul Formation cultivators in a row, he has indeed become stronger again. If he's given some time, he might turn into Qi." There was a beast in the Eastern Sea named Ho that could eat the brains of dragons. It could fly through the sky and escape through the earth. It was exceptionally ferocious, and every time it fought with a dragon, it would spit out divine flames from its mouth that would burn everything. Thunder Immortal Envoy continued. Later on, it was rumored that Immortal Palace's lord took action and fought against him. As for what happened afterwards, we do not know. He then said, "The only thing we know is that over half of that person's subordinates were killed by my Immortal Palace, and only a few escaped with heavy injuries. We all suspect that that person was killed by Immortal Palace's lord." Killing? Yi Chen chuckled softly, but he did not believe it. With his understanding of Ing, if he didn't have a certain amount of confidence, why would he come to the All-Heaven region and pluck the Celestial Palace's beard? But then again, Ing was truly lawless, stirring up trouble everywhere he went. If it were anyone else, they would have died many times over. Seeing that he didn't say a word, the Thunder Celestial Messenger trembled and said, "Sir, I have told you everything I know. Please spare my life and let me reincarnate." Although his physical body was destroyed, his primordial spirit was still there. As long as there was a suitable cauldron, he could reincarnate and cultivate again. Even though it was difficult to cultivate again, it was better than dying. Even though there was a legend of reincarnation, who could guarantee that they would be a pig or a dog in their next life? Even if they reincarnated as a human, without a spiritual root and without the memories of their previous lives, they would not be able to embark on the path of cultivation. Yi Chen looked at him quietly, and his gaze gradually turned cold. "I think there's no need for you to exist anymore." "No, sir. Spare me," the Thunder Celestial Messenger begged bitterly. Thousand Illusion Fairy suddenly said, "Sir, I don't think we can kill him yet." Yi Chen looked at her immediately. The former bit the bullet and said, "This person is the Immortal Palace's messenger, so he must have a soul tablet in the Immortal Palace. Once he dies, the soul tablet he left in the Immortal Palace will crack and alert the enemy." "That's right, sir." Thousand Illusion Fairy's words make sense. Even the Patriarch of Green Spirit and the Heavenly Ghost sect nodded in unison. "Forget it. I'll spare your life for now." Yi Chun then retracted his killing intent and said, "If you want the chance to be reborn, you'll have to be as obedient as before." The Thunder Celestial Messenger immediately nodded with a look of relief. "All right, then let's go." Yi Chen sealed his primordial spirit and charged out with a flash. He looked at the black pillar that pierced into the clouds. "This time, I'm going to flatten the All-Heaven region and make the Immortal Palace bleed." In the clouds, there was a formation barrier that seemed to cover the sky. A terrifying spatial energy faintly came from it. "Sir, this is the wonder of the Tong Tian Tower." The Patriarch of Green Spirit introduced it to Yi Chun respectfully. "This barrier has been set up in the other 2 regions. It can lead directly to the All-Heaven region. At the same time, it prevents people from the other 2 regions from coming to our Luoxiao region without permission." Yi Chun carried his daughter and walked to the barrier. He looked at it for a while and raised his right hand. He immediately shot a restriction shadow at the barrier. Boom! Following a loud noise, a crack slowly opened up in the huge light curtain enchantment, like a snowflake melting in the middle. "Let's go." Yi Chen's figure quickly changed and eventually turned into the Thunder, celestial messenger. When the heavenly ghost sex patriarch and the rest saw this scene, they were still extremely shocked. His body swayed, and he immediately jumped in with his daughter in his arms. His heart was in turmoil. Yuhan, I'm here. Our family will be reunited soon. At the same time, in the All-Heaven region, in the depths of a purple bamboo forest shrouded in spiritual mist, there was an elegant and unique green-tiled courtyard. The bamboo forest in the garden seemed to grow casually, but there was a hidden mystery. At the base of every bamboo forest, there were hidden array legs. Tens of thousands of bamboo forests formed a world of array formations that was like a cage. At this moment, there was a thin woman with a cold temperament sitting cross-legged in the garden. She seemed to have merged with everything around her. The woman wore white clothes and had long hair that flowed like a waterfall. Her beautiful face was like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. If one took a closer look, they would discover that her lower abdomen was high. It was obvious that she was pregnant. A moment later, the woman spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face suddenly turned extremely pale, and her aura weakened. Out of the 36,000 formations, I've already comprehended 35,990 of them. Why is it that I still can't comprehend the last one? The woman raised her eyes and sized up the bamboo forest in front of her. Her beautiful eyes revealed a trace of yearning. I want to break out of the cage and return to nature. I'm useless. I'm useless. She held back her tears and looked at the ring on her finger. Her face was sad and beautiful. Yi Chun, where are you? The yearning in her eyes grew stronger and more painful. Her heart ached more and more. The scenes of her meeting Yi Chun appeared in her mind countless times. It was also the motivation for her to persevere. Yi Chun, I might not be able to wait for you. In the end, she could not hold back the tears in her eyes. They flowed down slowly and wetted her clothes. Perhaps I'll be dead by the time you come. Thinking to this point, she gritted her teeth and caressed her protruding abdomen. Child, when will you be born? Mommy knows you can understand me. I'll give you another 7 days. If you're not born, then disappear with me. As soon as she finished speaking, her phoenix-like eyes could not help but frown. Then, she revealed a pained expression as if she had been kicked by the fetus in her womb. Damn, father. Mama's already given me a death notice. If you still don't come, your son, I, will really die before I'm born. A childish voice could be faintly heard from the woman's stomach. If the woman were to hear this, she would definitely be shocked. What a vicious woman. It's not that I don't want to be born, but that old man Chi has been coveting me. Once I'm born, Mom will be in trouble. Damn, father. Why aren't you here yet? Mom is crazy. She forcefully expended her life force to comprehend the formation and escape. However, doesn't she know that once her life force is exhausted, she won't be able to escape death? Sigh, I'm not even born yet, and I already have to stick to the mission of protecting Mom. Is it easy for me? The childish voice became more and more excited as it spoke. Then it seemed to have sensed something and suddenly laughed out loud. He's here. Damn, father is here. My hard days are finally coming to an end. P.S. The climax is coming. Please give me a ticket. The various pits in front are intertwined. It's too hard to write, my brothers. End of this chapter. Chapter 1332. The Dang province was located in the northern part of the All-Heaven region, one of the 4 great regions of the vast Purple Realm. It was vast and surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. It was rumored that a long time ago, 3 stars had descended from the heavens and surrounded this place. Because of this, the 3 mountains resembled stars and were known as the 3 Stars Mountains. It was unknown how many cities there were in Dang Province, but the most prosperous one was the eastern edge of Dang Province, Giant Puppet City. The reason why Giant Puppet City was so famous was because of the Giant Puppet sect that was located here. The Giant Puppet sect was the largest cultivation sect in the Dang Province. Even in the entire All-Heaven region, it was one of the top sections. This was because the Giant Puppet sect had more than one soul formation cultivator. The Giant Puppet sect's ancestor was at the mid-stage of soul formation. At this moment, in the sky above the giant puppet sect, there was a black flood dragon flying through the void. Its speed was like rolling thunder, and it could travel thousands of miles in an instant. The baleful aura of this black WYRM was monstrous, and it was like a cloud that covered the sky as it pressed down upon the heavens and the earth. It shocked many demon beasts on the ground below, to the point they knelt down in unison and shivered. This group was naturally Yi Chun and the others who had been teleported to the All-Heaven region from the Sky-Reaching Tower in the Luoxia region. From the Sky-Reaching Tower, the group arrived at the edge of the Dang province. Then, Xiaohei revealed its true form to carry them. Yi Chun, who had transformed into the Thunder Immortal representative, held his daughter and stood on Little Black's back. A golden quintessential energy barrier appeared around him and ignored the sharp wind. "Sir, Giant Puppet City is just ahead." Ancestor Azure Spirit respectfully stood behind him and explained, "The Immortal Palace is in the eastern part of the All-Heaven region, hundreds of thousands of miles away from Giant Puppet City. If we want to speed up, I'm afraid we'll need to use the Giant Puppet Sect's transfer array." Giant Puppet Sect? Yi Chen's eyes gleamed. This time, the Heavenly Ghost Sect's ancestor rushed to answer, "Sir, Giant Puppet City was built because of the Giant Puppet Sect. It is a transcendent existence in the Dang province, and even my Heavenly Ghost Sect cannot compare to it." As he spoke, a towering black shadow suddenly shot up from the ground below. At the same time, a stern shout shook the sky. "May I ask which fellow Taoist is passing through my Giant Puppet City?" Immediately afterwards, an exceptionally burly, giant-like, rough-looking man arrived with the wind. The man gave off a faint aura of a mid-soul formation cultivator, causing the expressions of the Heavenly Ghost Sect's ancestor and the others to change. "You must be fellow Taoist Chiu of the Giant Puppet Sect, right?" The green spirit ancestor took a step forward and faintly smiled. "This old man is the ancestor of the green spirit sect in the Luoxia region. Today, I came with the Thunder Celestial Messenger from the Luoxia region to the All-Heaven region to celebrate with the Celestial Palace. So, it's a fellow cultivator from the Azure Spirit sect of the Sunset Cloud Domain." The rough man was stunned at first. Then he noticed Yi Chen's existence. He immediately bowed and said, "Thunder Immortal Envoy, I didn't know about your arrival. Please forgive me." "My lord, this person is the Giant Puppet Sect's patriarch, Qiu Xinming." The patriarch of Green Spirit seemed to be worried that Yi Chan would give himself away, so he secretly sent a voice transmission with his divine consciousness. "So it's fellow Taoist Qiu." Yi Chan looked at him calmly. "I'm bringing the people of the Luoxia regions for major sects back to the Immortal Palace to report. I hope fellow Qiu can make things convenient for us." Thunder Immortal Envoy is too polite. The Giant Puppet Sect's ancestor smiled politely and said, "My Giant Puppet City's transmission array has already been prepared for Immortal Envoy. Immortal Envoy can use it at any time. Lead the way." Yi Chun said expressionlessly. The Giant Puppet Sect's ancestor did not say anything else. He turned around and landed on the ground. He ordered people to remove the protective formation and personally welcomed Yi Chun and the rest into the city. Throughout the entire process, the Patriarch of Green Spirit, the Heavenly Ghost Sect, and the rest were trembling with fear. They were afraid that Yi Chen's identity as the fake Thunder Immortal Envoy would be exposed. Yi Chun, on the other hand, behaved naturally. The reason why he had transformed into the Thunder Immortal Envoy was to avoid unnecessary trouble and rush to the Immortal Palace faster. Judging from the attitude of the Giant Puppet Sect's ancestor, his decision was the right one. Soon, the Giant Puppet Sect's ancestor brought everyone to the core of Giant Puppet City. There was a transmission array that had been built with countless materials. "Thunder Immortal Envoy, are you in a hurry?" The Giant Puppet Sect's ancestor stopped in his tracks and thought to himself as he looked at Yi Chun, "If you're not in a hurry, please rest here for a while. I can prepare some banquets and songs to entertain you as a host." His words were extremely flattering. Yi Chun refused without hesitation. No. The Giant Puppet Sect's ancestor could only sigh regretfully when he heard this. Only then did he lead the group toward the transmission array. "Ancestor, At this moment, a cry of surprise came from afar. Then, a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes turned into a streak of light and flew over. The middle-aged man landed next to the giant puppet sex ancestor. He looked at Yi Chun and the rest first, seemingly hesitating. The giant puppet sex ancestor looked displeased as he berated, "The Thunder Immortal Envoy is here. What can't you say?" The man nodded and immediately said, "Ancestor, the situation with Elder Chu and the rest isn't too good." "What did you say?" The giant puppet sex ancestor's expression immediately darkened. Elder Chu is at the early stage, soul formation stage after all, and he has the help of many nascent soul elders. How could he not be able to capture a young man, surnamed Sure? This brat is only at the perfected nascent soul stage. Ancestor, that brat's surname Sure has become a demon. The man's expression changed, and he immediately knelt on one knee and said while trembling with fear, "I don't know what kind of demonic technique that brat cultivates, but he has a pair of demonic eyes that are extremely strange. He can absorb a cultivator's soul, and even Elder Chu almost fell into his trap." Demonic eyes? The giant puppet sex ancestor's gaze froze. When Yichin heard the word Sure, he could not help but look at the former and ask, "What's this person's name? How is he so powerful?" Even the patriarch of Green Spirit and the rest behind him were curious. "Lord Thunder Immortal Envoy. This person's surname is Sure, and his name is Qianan. He's from the lower realm, the ancient desolate realm." The giant puppet sex ancestor glanced at Yi Chan in surprise and said, "Yesterday, 2 hall masters from the Immortal Palace personally went to the lower realm to suppress these rebels. This Sure Qianhan is the fish that escaped the net." As he said that, there was a hint of confusion in his eyes as he looked at Yi Chun. "Immortal Envoy, you're one of the 5 immortal envoys of the Immortal Palace, yet you don't know about the Immortal Palace's actions?" "I've been in closed-door cultivation in the Tong Tian Tower for the past few days. I've only come out today, so I don't know," Yi Chun said calmly, but an extreme coldness and fierceness surged in the depths of his eyes. Something was wrong with the ancient desolate realm. He had obtained too much information from the giant puppet sex ancestor. It seemed that after he came to the Violet World, the Immortal Palace had sent someone to the lower realm again. Moreover, it was not one immortal envoy this time. It was 2 hall masters. The 2 of them were at least at the late-stage god transformation stage. In the ancient desolate realm, apart from himself, the Patriarch of Hell was probably the only one with peak combat power. Now that Sure Qianhan had come to the Violet World for some reason, and his tracks had been discovered, he seemed to be in a dangerous situation. The Patriarch and his parents. End of this chapter. Chapter 1333. This series of psychological changes was completed in an instant. Yi Wushuang and Xiao Hei's expressions changed slightly. They wanted to say something, but hesitated. Yichen took a deep breath in and signaled the 2 of them with his eyes. He then looked at the giant puppet sex patriarch and said, "Fellow Chiu, I'm suddenly interested in that person with the surname Sure. Moreover, as the Immortal Palace's Thunder Immortal Envoy, I naturally have the obligation to help you capture and eradicate the rebels from the lower realm." Hearing this, the giant puppet sex patriarch pondered for a few seconds before nodding and saying, "That's good too. Since Lord Immortal Envoy is interested, how can I refuse? When the time comes, Lord Immortal Envoy just needs to watch from the side. Just my giant demon sect is enough to deal with such a small fry." Yichen looked at the nascent soul cultivator who was kneeling on the ground after he said that. "Where are they?" That person did not dare to hide anything and said, "Lord Immortal Envoy, they're at 3 Corpse Ridge." The 3 Corpse Ridge was a rather strange place in Dang Province. This place was located between 3 star mountains. The terrain was special, the land was black, and the Yin energy was extremely dense. Due to the frequent rumors of haunting, most people would die when they heard of it. However, this place with extremely dense Yin energy and few people was currently covered by the pungent smell of blood and monstrous killing intent. At the peak of 3 Corpse Ridge, a white-robed figure stood there with a halberd in his hand. His white robe had long been dyed red with blood. It was a black-haired young man. His extremely handsome features were slightly pale, and he seemed to be injured. There was blood at the corner of his mouth. If one took a closer look, they would find that his eyes were completely black like black holes. A strange and evil mysterious power surged out, as if an ancient demon lord had descended from above. Beneath his feet, corpses piled up like a mountain. The scarlet blood caused the black ground to turn red. It was a ghastly sight. The remaining few thousand cultivators sealed off everything and looked at him in fear. Their eyes were filled with fear. The reason being that the other party had killed thousands of them by himself, and there were even a few perfected nascent soul cultivators among them. If not for the fact that the source of the news was accurate, they would not have believed that this was the ant and rebel from the lower realm that they disdained. Sure, Qianhan, accept your fate. Several figures sealed off the world. Among them, an old man in a black robe fixed his gaze on the former. Today, you have nowhere to go. Why must you struggle? Young man, surrender. An early-stage soul formation cultivator in a golden robe slowly said with a bewitching voice, I can see that your talent is extraordinary. If you surrender now, I can spare your life. I can even ask the Immortal Palace to accept you as a disciple. The white-robed youth's demonic eyes were extremely powerful. He almost fell into the trap just now. Ha ha! At this moment, a mournful roar came from the white-clothed youth. How can I, Shi Qianhan, be surrounded by so many experts? There's even an emperor's throne among them. The halberd in his hand let out a mournful cry. Cut the crap, come on! The white-clothed youth wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked at the crowd below with resentment and mockery. I, Shi Qianhan, will only die standing, never kneel to live. The giant puppet sect soul formation elder's eyes turned cold, and he immediately shouted, This person's eye technique must have a price. He can't keep using it. Let's attack together and kill him. As his voice fell, the thousands of cultivators who were hesitating and did not dare to step forward also activated their true essence and charged towards the white-clothed youth with monstrous killing intent. Brother Yi, I'm afraid I won't be able to wait for you. The white-clothed youth smiled and took a deep breath. The black aura in his eyes surged again, as if it was connected to the demon world. He hated. The Immortal Palace had sent people to the lower realm and almost turned the ancient barren world upside down. Countless experts had died, and even his North Sea dragon's subduing hall had been destroyed. He hated. In order to protect him, the old celestial venerable resolutely killed the wind immortal hall master from the lower realm. In the end, he was forced to self-destruct to buy time. He still hated. It was useless for him to keep his body. He did not even come into contact with the Immortal Palace. Today, he was going to die here, unable to avenge the old celestial venerable and the others. Kill. The white-clothed youth activated his demon eye with all his might. A pair of dark lights shot through the sky, as if they were going to split the sky apart. Buzz, at this moment, the space in the distance trembled. Immediately after, several powerful pressures descended on this world, and then several figures appeared. The leader was a burly man who looked like an iron tower. As soon as he appeared, everyone felt the pressure and could not help but stop. It's the Patriarch. Someone's eyes lit up, and he recognized him at a glance. At the same time, the early-stage soul formation elder of the giant demon sect immediately went up to him. Patriarch, why are you here? The giant puppet sect's patriarch scanned the entire place and finally looked at Yichun. He introduced him to the former. This is the Thunder Immortal Envoy of the Immortal Palace. He came with me to watch the battle. So it's the Thunder Immortal Envoy. Elder Chu was shocked. He bowed to Yi Chun immediately and said, Lord Immortal Envoy, we're just capturing an ignorant junior. It's our fault for troubling you to come personally. Yi Chun ignored what he said. He scanned the world and finally fixed his gaze on the white-clothed figure in the distance. At that moment, a strange light flashed through his eyes. Then, he said calmly, May I know which one of you is Shi Qianhan? Elder Chu turned around and pointed at Shi Qianhan in the distance. Lord Immortal Master, this is the one. He's extraordinary. Yi Chun nodded. Lord Immortal Envoy, you can just watch from the side. Leave everything to the giant puppet sect. The giant puppet sect's patriarch smiled and took a step forward. He looked at the white-clothed youth from afar. Junior, I'm the giant puppet sect's patriarch. This is the Thunder Immortal Envoy of the Immortal Palace. You have no chance of survival in front of us. At this point, he could not help but narrow his eyes and say coldly, if you know what's good for you, it's not too late to surrender now. Giant Demon, Sex Patriarch, Immortal Envoy. The white-clothed youth sneered when he heard this. You're just lackeys of the Immortal Palace. If there's a next life, I'll make a comeback and destroy all of you. Stubborn. The giant demon sex patriarch snorted coldly and looked at Elder Chu. I'll give you an hour. If you can't take down this person, kill yourself as an apology. In front of the Thunder Immortal Envoy, if the giant demon sect could not even deal with a perfected nascent soul junior, not only would the Immortal Envoy look down on them, they would also become a laughingstock. Yes, sensing the killing intent in the former's words, Elder Chu's heart turned cold. He immediately looked at the white-clothed youth and turned around. Brat, since you don't know how to appreciate favors, then die. End of this chapter. Chapter 1334. With that, Elder Chu immediately let out a loud shout and spat out a white blade from his mouth. It immediately turned into a white bone blade that was filled with dense, baleful yin qi. At the next moment, his figure flashed, and he charged at the white-clothed young man like lightning. The killing intent in his eyes almost materialized. Buzz! Right at this moment, he suddenly felt a bone-chilling sense of danger coming from behind him. He immediately turned around and saw a 100-meter-long strand of sword chi that pierced through the sky. The sword chi tore through space and whistled towards him. Bleck! Elder Chu did not even have the time to react or scream before he was sliced into two by the sword. Even his primordial spirit could not escape. The sudden scene shocked everyone. They looked at Yi Wuxuang, who was behind Yi Chun, at the same time. Their eyes were filled with shock. The giant puppet sex patriarch stared at Yi Wuxuang with an extremely terrible expression. Lord Immortal Envoy, what do you mean by this? Elder Chu was one of the only two god transformation stage divine lords in the giant puppet sect, but he was killed by Yi Wuxuang with a single strike. That strike was so fast that even he did not have time to stop it, causing the chill in his heart to increase. Even the white-clothed young man in the distance did not expect that to happen. He could not help but look at Yi Chun and the rest. He could not help but tremble when he noticed Yi Wuxuang and Xiao He behind Yi Chun. His face suddenly turned extremely red as if he had recognized something. Immortal Envoy? Yi Chun suddenly scoffed when he met the giant puppet sex patriarch's gaze. Look at who I am. At the next moment, his body and face began to change at a speed visible to the naked eye. Within a few breaths of time, he had returned to his original appearance. The giant puppet sex patriarch's expression finally changed. He looked at Yi Chun in shock and anger. Who are you? Are you surprised? Yi Chun looked at him coldly. I'm the rebel from the lower realm that you mentioned. The original Wind, Immortal Envoy, and Thunder, Immortal Envoy have already died in my hands. The moment that was said, heaven and earth fell silent. The giant puppet sex patriarch felt like a bolt out of the blue. His ears were ringing as he looked at Yi Chun in shock. Rebel from the lower realm. He even killed the Thunder Immortal and Wind Immortal messengers. What terrified him the most was that this person had changed in a Thunder celestial representative's face and swaggered around in front of him, yet he wasn't able to see through him. With this in mind, the giant puppet sex ancestor tried to break through the void to escape, only to find that the surrounding space had been sealed. He roared as he activated his soul formation mid-stage cultivation with all his might, and his body shot into the distance like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, he roared in his heart. Thunder Immortal Envoy and Wind Immortal Envoy were both at the mid-stage of soul formation and had received the inheritance of the Immortal Palace. Even the two of them weren't this person's match, let alone this old man. This person couldn't be defeated. He had to escape and think of a way to notify Immortal Palace in the future. As long as Immortal Palace's experts took action, this person would undoubtedly die. However, in the next moment, his body could not help but pause. Yi Wuxiang suddenly appeared in the void before him. The giant puppet sect's ancestor's heart trembled, and he immediately changed direction, only to be met by Ancestor Azure Spirit. Following that, it was the Heavenly Ghost sect's patriarch, Thousand Illusion Fairy, and the others who blocked off all his paths of retreat. The giant puppet sect's patriarch was on the verge of vomiting blood. Old Man Azure Spirit, good job. How dare you betray Immortal Palace? Go on your way, giant puppet sect. Ancestor Azure Spirit smirked coldly. Boom! The four of them attacked instantly. Yi Chen retracted his gaze and glanced at the cultivator, counting money in the distance. Then, he turned to Xiao Hei, who was next to him, and said, I'll leave them to you. Remember, don't leave a single one alive. All right. Xiao Hei grinned, and with a flash of his body, he immediately charged towards the thousands of cultivators with a cold gaze. In an instant, the world was filled with screams. Yi Chen carried his daughter and walked towards a young man in white step by step. Eventually, he stopped and said, Brother Shi, I'm sorry to scare you. The black energy in Shi Qianhan's eyes gradually faded, and a bitter smile appeared on his pale face. I really didn't expect Brother Yi to come and save me. As soon as he finished speaking, he fell to the ground. Meng Meng immediately became nervous. Daddy, what happened to Uncle Shi? Yi Chen shook his head and sighed softly. He's fine. He just used power that shouldn't have belonged to him and overexerted himself. Giant Puppet City. As the giant puppet sect's patriarch and the thousands of cultivators present were killed, Yi Chen transformed into the giant puppet sect's patriarch again and took control of the huge city. In the luxurious city governor's mansion, Yi Chen looked at Shi Qianhan, who had just woken up with a complicated expression, and said, Brother Shi, you've gone astray. Through the examination, he had already found out about Shi Qianhan's physical condition. He seemed to have obtained the inheritance of the devil world, and this so-called inheritance was definitely related to Shi Qianhan's pair of demonic eyes. That pair of demonic eyes was definitely the product of a fallen devil world almighty. It was difficult to change its ferocity, and it still existed. Astray? Shi Qianhan looked at him and smiled bitterly. Brother Yi, can you tell me what the right path is? What is the wrong path? Yi Chen fell silent. Seeing that he did not speak, Shi Qianhan mumbled, It seems to be the sword sect of Shang Santian's Kunlun ruins. The Heavenly Thunder sect seems to be the righteous path to outsiders, right? But what do? It's like the Immortal Palace. They have immortals in their name, but what's the difference between them and devils? He stared at Yi Chen with mockery at the corner of his lips. I don't believe in the right path now. As long as it can give me power and make me stronger, it's the right path. At the very least, I have the ability to protect others. There's something wrong with the origin of your demonic eyes. If you continue like this, I'm afraid it'll take over. Yi Chen frowned and said, Most importantly, if you cultivate to a certain level in the future, I'm afraid you won't be able to become an immortal, much less ascend to the immortal world. You'll only fall into the devil world, so what? Shi Qianhan's gaze was firm. If only the devil world can tolerate me, then I, Shi Qianhan, am willing to become a demon. I'll bury the immortals above the 9 heavens and suppress the demons below the 9 hells. That's all I have to say. Seeing that he had already made up his mind, Yi Chen could only shake his head and say, What exactly happened in the ancient desolate realm? What are you doing here? As soon as he said that, monstrous black energy surged in Shi Qianhan's eyes again. Finally, he moved slightly. The ancient desolate realm has been destroyed. Yi Chen was shocked when he heard that. He then asked, What exactly happened? Not long after you left, the Immortal Palace sent people to the lower realm. Shi Qianhan looked at him blankly and said, I heard from the Patriarch of Hell that the 2 people who came to the lower realm were very powerful. They were at the late-stage soul formation stage. The many emperors throned in the ancient desolate realm were no match for them. Many sects were destroyed, and many powerhouses died. End of this chapter. Chapter 1335. The North Sea Dragon's subduing hall was destroyed. All the powerhouses were killed. Only my foster father and I escaped. The old heavenly venerable, the radiant patriarch, Fairy Yuching, Zen Master Bao Xian of the Pure World Zen sect, and the rest were not afraid of death. They resolutely chose to fight the people from the immortal palace. At this point, tears of blood flowed from Shi Qianhan's eyes. They're all dead, especially the old heavenly venerable. In order to protect us, he chose to self-destruct. What about the Patriarch of Hell? Yichen closed his eyes. His heart ached slightly. How are the Patriarch of Hell and my parents? Fortunately, there's the Patriarch of Hell. Shi Qianhan took a deep breath in and said, the two people from the immortal palace split into two groups. One of them headed straight for the various forces, while the other headed for a Huang kingdom. He could not help but glance at Yi Chun. The person who went to a Huang kingdom came for you. In the end, you weren't there, and the Patriarch of Hell fought him. What happened? Yi Chun asked. Dead. Shi Qianhan smiled sinisterly. That person was killed by the Patriarch of Hell, but the Patriarch seems to be injured. Moreover, the Empress of a Huang kingdom, Zhang is also dead. Yi Chun could imagine how tragic the battle was when he heard that. The Patriarch of Hell was only at the beginner stage God transformation stage, but he was able to kill a late stage God transformation stage cultivator. Even though he was a tribulation stage cultivator in his previous life, he had to pay a huge price to achieve that. However, it was a pity for the Empress of a Huang kingdom, Zhang. Before this, Yi Chun could tell the relationship between him and the Patriarch. Now that Zhang was dead, the Patriarch must be feeling terrible. Thinking to this point, he could not help but ask, what happened after that? Shi Qianhan said in a deep voice, after the Patriarch killed one person, the other person descended. In the end, the Patriarch destroyed his body, and his primordial spirit fled frantically. It seemed to have escaped back to the immortal palace. Even though he knew that the Patriarch was extraordinary, Yi Chun could not help but secretly gasp when he heard that. With his cultivation base at beginner stage God transformation stage, he had fought two late-stage God transformation stage powerhouses consecutively. He had killed one and crippled the other. Later, the ancestor endured his injuries and gathered all of us who were still alive. Shi Qianhan glanced at Yi Chun. Your parents are among them. The Patriarch brought us to this firmament purple world through the passage that the people of the immortal palace used to descend. Yi Chun heaved a sigh of relief after hearing that his parents were fine. He then said, why were you alone then? Shi Qianhan shook his head and said, when we passed through the spatial channel, the ancestor's injuries worsened and he was unable to stabilize the spatial channel. He could only protect your parents while we fell into the rift. When I woke up, I found myself in Giant Puppet City. When he spoke to this point, his eyes became cold. I believe you can guess what happened next. The Giant Puppet sect received the Immortal Palace's wanted order and discovered my whereabouts. As such, they sent people to capture me. Does that mean you've been separated? Yi Chun's heart gradually sank. Although he was sure that the old ancestor and the others would be fine in the space channel, the old ancestor was injured. Coming to the firmament purple world, his life would be in danger at any time. Moreover, the firmament purple world was much larger than the ancient barren world. The four major regions were even more boundless. How could it be easy for him to find them so quickly? Right? At this moment, Shi Qianhan seemed to have thought of something. He looked at him and said, when we entered the space channel, the old ancestor left a divine consciousness imprint on each of us. After saying that, he slowly stretched out his hand. On his wrist, there was a black mark. The mark was very faint, and it faintly flickered with a red light. It's indeed the old ancestor's divine consciousness imprint. Yi Chun took a few looks, and his eyes lit up. But what does this red light represent? Is it where the old ancestor is? No. Shi Qianhan shook his head and said, the old ancestor once said that this imprint can allow the people closest to us to sense each other. The closer we are, the more obvious the fluctuations of the imprint will be. This red light should be my foster father and the rest. Hall Master Bei Yun and the rest? Yi Chun could not help but squint and say, If that's the case, the most important thing now is to find Halm, Master Bei Yun, and the rest. Perhaps we can sense the old ancestors' whereabouts from the imprint on their bodies. He was very worried about the old ancestors' safety. After all, he was able to kill a late-stage God Transformation Stage cultivator and cripple the body of a late-stage God Transformation Stage cultivator. He must have suffered serious injuries. Shi Qianhan said that even when the spatial tunnel collapsed, he still protected his parents. In other words, it was very likely that his parents were with the old ancestor. As long as he found the old ancestor, he would be able to find his parents. Yi Chun stood up immediately and looked at Shi Qianhan as he thought to this point. Brother Shi, there's no time to lose. Come with me now. Fortunately, there were still 6 days before the Immortal Palace's dual cultivation ceremony. He still had time. 1,000 kilometers south of Giant Puppet City. Shi Qianhan lowered his head and looked at the divine consciousness imprint on his wrist. The red light was getting brighter. Foster father and the rest should be in the south. It seems like they're 10,000 kilometers away from us. That's right. Yi Chen nodded and said, it's 10,000 kilometers away. We'll be able to get there in half an hour. I hope they can hold on. By the way, Brother Yi, Shi Qianhan suddenly lifted his head and looked at Yi Chun. After you left, there was news from the Tianfeng Sea area. Young Mistress Mu's grave was struck by lightning. Yi Chun paused immediately. After Mu Kaiwei died in the Jade Lake Sacred Ground, her body was escorted back to the Tianfeng Sea region and buried beside her mother's grave. But now it had actually been struck by lightning. Shi Qianhan looked at him and said, not only was it hacked, but even the body inside has disappeared. Yi Chen's eyes turned cold. Could it be that someone stole it? Even though he and Mu Kaiwei had already gone their separate ways, there was no longer any grudges between the two of them after her death. After all, the dead were the most important. Now that her corpse had disappeared, it caused him to feel a little angry. Not sure, Shi Qianhan said. However, I have personally gone to her grave in the Tianfeng Sea area to investigate. I found that although there are traces of lightning striking the ground, there is an incomparably powerful vitality and spiritual energy. That vitality and spiritual energy caused many supreme medicines to be born within 1,000 feet of Miss Mu's tomb. It was so much so that even 10,000-year-old ginseng grew in the coffin. Yi Chen's eyes flashed indiscernibly upon hearing that. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Also, Yi Dongli's body has disappeared. Shi Qianhan revealed another piece of important news. After you left, his body was buried by the Yi family from the Forbidden Sea. However, it disappeared along with Miss Mu's body. Is it a coincidence? Yi Chen squinted and mumbled, Yi Dongli, don't tell me you're not dead. Is it time for the scheme you've set up for 10,000 years to come to an end? But why did you take Mu Kaiwei away? Thinking to this point, a cold smirk gradually appeared at the corner of his lips. If you continue to be my enemy, don't blame me for ignoring the bloodline relationship between us. P.S. Chapter 4. Explain the reason why I didn't update yesterday. The day before yesterday, I went back to my hometown to sweep the grave and caught a cold. When I returned that night, I had a headache, but I still gritted my teeth and wrote 3 chapters. In the end, when I woke up yesterday morning, I could not take it anymore. I just returned from the county hospital today, and I'm much better now. I didn't even have time to eat and insisted on writing 4 chapters. I'll update 4 chapters for now. 5 chapters tomorrow, which means 9 chapters in 2 days. It's equivalent to 3 days of updates. There will be more in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 1336. South of Dang Province, All Heaven region, by the edge of 3-Star Mountain. The mountain range stretched out continuously, imposing and majestic. It was verdant and lush, ancient trees that reached into the heavens covering everything. However, the ground was filled with a strong killing intent and the pungent smell of blood. Kill! Fierce battle cries scattered the clouds. Upon closer inspection, one would see that the ground was covered with figures. They were all wearing the same clothes. On their chests were the same black and white patterns. If there were outsiders here, they would find that all of them were from the Immortal Palace. Many people from the immortal palace stared at the narrow mountain peak in the distance with bloodthirsty and murderous intent. There were figures dressed differently from the immortal palace there, but there were only a dozen of them. However, their current situation was not good. Their auras were weak and their bodies were stained with blood. They seemed to be at the end of their rope. Kill. There were cultivators rushing up from the foot of the mountain, but they were all beaten back by these dozen people. Even so, if this continued, these dozen people would definitely be exhausted. Die. The emperor of the Xia, son of Heaven Hua, killed a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator with a single strike. Blood splashed all over his face, and he took a few steps back. Feeling the exhaustion from his dantian, Emperor Hua, Tianzi, looked at the purple-clothed man not far away with red eyes. Brother Biming, there are too many of them. If this continues, we will die for sure. His heart was bleeding. The ancient barren world was destroyed. He watched as countless friends, family, and even commoners died in the hands of the immortal palace cultivators. At that moment, he realized that, so what if he was the emperor of the Xia dynasty? He still felt powerless before the immortal palace. 2 people. The immortal palace only sent out 2 people, but the result was the deaths of Emperor Biming, Buddhist master Bao Xian, Ancestor Guang, and others. He hated it. He hated himself for being useless. However, they finally escaped to the purple world. Before they could even catch their breath, they were surrounded by the cultivators of the immortal palace. Now, they were forced to this lonely mountain peak. There were originally more than 30 people in their group, but now less than half of them were left, and some of them were still dying. Hearing his furious roar, the North Sea Palace Master killed a person with a palm and roared, "Brother Hua, all of you leave. I'll cover the rear." "No." Emperor Hua smiled tragically. "I'm about to leave the ancient barren world. How can I leave you all behind? If you want to leave, we'll leave together." "That's right. Let's go together. If worst comes to worst, we'll just fight them to the death. It's enough to drag them down with us before we die. I believe that Emperor Lord Yi will take revenge for us in the future. Kill. Rather die than surrender." As soon as he finished speaking, he received the approval of the remaining 14 people. Among them were the remaining emperor's throne cultivators from the various clans of the ancient barren world. Their eyes were filled with hatred and madness. "None of you will escape today." At this moment, a clap of thunder exploded in the sky. Then, lightning appeared in the sky. As soon as he landed on the ground, he transformed into a man in a snow-white robe. The man's entire body was surging with lightning, as if he was an immortal who controlled lightning. "Greetings, Lightning Envoy." The people from the immortal palace who surrounded the North Sea Hall Masters group all knelt down on one knee. They were extremely respectful. Lowly rebels from the lower world. The envoy looked at the North Sea Palace Masters group with disdain. He mocked, "If you were still willing to be enslaved by the immortal palace, would you have fallen to this state today?" Bah! As soon as he finished speaking, an emperor's throne cultivator behind Emperor Hua sneered, "Your immortal palace has enslaved our ancient barren world for 10,000 years. We've been sick of it for a long time and want to tear you all to pieces." "Well said." Another person said tragically, "We've been dogs for 10,000 years. So what if we survived? We've lost our Tao hearts a long time ago. What's the difference between us and the walking dead?" Shameless boasting. The envoy sneered, "Today I'll give you all one more chance. As long as you're willing to kneel and swear loyalty to the immortal palace, I can spare your lives." "Swear loyalty to the immortal palace?" Emperor Hua chuckled in disdain. "You've killed so many people from the ancient barren world. I'll remember this blood feud. I only hate that I don't have the ability to destroy you all. Dogs of the immortal palace, there's no need to waste words." The North Sea Palace Master said coldly with a determined expression, "Everyone here is from the ancient barren world. None of us are afraid of death." The envoy's eyes turned cold. "Since you don't know what's good for you, I'll send you on your way." With that, he waved his hand, and a chilling voice came from his mouth. "Kill. Leave no one alive. Kill." As his voice fell, the thousands of cultivators present immediately surged out, each activating their true essence. Magic treasures and divine abilities. Surging power surged in the world. Ha! The North Sea Palace Master couldn't help but laugh tragically. I didn't think that my Z Kunlun would end up like this after dominating the ancient barren world for thousands of years. However, if I can kill a few more dogs of the Immortal Palace before I die, my life won't be in vain. Kill. With that, he took a step forward. With every step he took, his aura grew stronger, and the wrinkles on his face could be seen with the naked eye. Obviously, he chose to burn his life force. Brother North Sea, I've always been unconvinced by you. The Emperor of the Xia dynasty laughed. However, I have no choice but to accept your actions today. If there's a next life, we'll definitely drink to our heart's content. Dogs of the Immortal Palace, let's die together. In the next moment, his originally tall and sturdy body suddenly expanded several times, and he charged towards the Immortal Palace's lightning immortal envoy with a terrifying power. Father, seeing this, the princess of the Xia dynasty, Hua Qianren, couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood and almost fainted. Self-destruct? The lightning envoy's expression didn't change as he watched the emperor of the Xia dynasty charge at him. Instead, he sneered, "It's just a last-ditch struggle." In the next moment, he stretched out his hand, and between his slightly withered fingers, a terrifying bolt of lightning immediately emerged. Swoosh! The emperor of the Xia dynasty, who was about to self-destruct, felt a bolt of lightning attack him. His body trembled violently, and he immediately lost consciousness, falling from the sky. Brother Hua, in the distance, the North Sea Palace Master was already covered in blood and looked extremely old. He couldn't help but be furious after seeing this. The lightning envoy grabbed him from afar and looked at him with a cruel expression. "Killing you will be too easy on you. I'll make you beg for death." Right at that moment, a calm voice slowly came from the void. "How dare you bully my friend?" Chapter 1337. The voice was neither loud nor soft, but every single word reverberated through the world, exploding in everyone's minds. At that moment, everyone stopped fighting at the same time and looked around in shock. Under everyone's gaze, several figures suddenly appeared in the air. It was Yi Chun and the rest. The lightning immortal envoy lifted his head abruptly and stared at Yi Chun and the rest. His eyes were filled with shock. With his cultivation base, he did not even sense Yi Chun's aura. If Yi Chun had ambushed him earlier, the consequences would have been unimaginable. As Yi Chun and the rest appeared, Home Master Bei Yun, Emperor Hua, and the rest immediately recognized them. Emperor Yi! Emperor Yi! Voices filled with excitement and disbelief came from the dozen or so people. Some of them were so excited that they cried, while others roared at the top of their lungs. Yi Chun smiled at them lightly. Then his gaze turned cold. He took a step toward the lightning immortal envoy with a flash. The lightning immortal envoy was shocked. He retreated immediately and stared at Yi Chun. "Who are you?" Yi Chun looked at the great Xia emperor in his hand quietly and said calmly, "Give me fellow Hua, and I'll leave your corpse intact. Otherwise, I'll grind your bones into ashes." The lightning immortal envoy's expression was extremely grim. He could not see through Yi Chun's cultivation base. There is clearly no spiritual energy fluctuation on Yi Chun's body, but he gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. His intuition told him that Yi Chun was not to be trifled with. His expression changed a few times as he thought to this point. He immediately tossed the great Xia emperor in his hand to Yi Chun. At the same time, he retreated 3,000 meters away at an extremely fast speed. Then, he pointed at the great Xia emperor. Explode. In that split second, he had planted the violent thunder origin crystal that he had collected in the great Xia emperor's body. If it were to explode, it would be enough to flatten a mountain. However, to his shock, there was no movement in the great Xia emperor's body after the word explode was said. On the other hand, Yi Chun looked at him with a spurious smile. Then he pointed at the top of the great Xia emperor's head and forcefully extracted the violent thunder origin crystal. How is this possible? The lightning immortal envoy's expression changed suddenly. He did not expect Yi Chun to resolve his technique so easily. This person is at least a soul formation late-stage cultivator. A terrifying thought suddenly emerged in his mind. Without hesitation, he urged his body to flee. He knew very well that he was only at the soul formation mid-stage, so there was no way he was a match for a soul formation late-stage cultivator. Sizzle. At that moment, the world suddenly darkened, and a huge spatial ravine that traversed the void appeared behind him. The electric immortal ambassador had goosebumps all over his body. He turned his head abruptly and saw that Yi Chun had appeared behind him out of nowhere. "Did I say you could leave?" Yi Chun glanced at him calmly. He grabbed the air with his right hand and reached for the Thunderbolt Immortal Messenger directly. The Thunder Immortal Ambassador roared furiously. Terrifying lightning surged between his brows. However, before it could explode, Yi Chun crushed his head with his palm. Fresh blood filled the air. The Thunderbolt Immortal Envoy's divine soul quickly rushed out of his broken body and turned into a small person. With a horrified expression, he tore through the sky and fled. Retract. However, Yi Chun's sleeves suddenly expanded as if they were being blown by a giant blower. Subsequently, a terrifying and irresistible suction force came, and the Thunderbolt Immortal Envoy's divine soul roared as it was sucked into his sleeve. This series of actions was as fast as lightning, and it was completed in the blink of an eye. When everyone came back to their senses, they could not help but reveal stunned expressions, especially the people from the Immortal Palace. One of the 5 immortal ambassadors of the Immortal Palace, the mid-stage soul formation Immortal Envoy, was suppressed so easily. Run, run. No one knew who cried out, but it caused many people to completely collapse. They all fled into the distance with ashen faces. Yi Chun's cold gaze swept across those people one by one. Then, he looked at the Patriarch of Green Spirit and the rest. Kill them all. Yes. When the Patriarch of Green Spirit and the Heavenly Ghost Sex Patriarch heard this, they immediately erupted with their soul formation stage cultivation. They split into 3 directions and charged at the defeated people from the Immortal Palace. Not long after, the entire world was covered in blood. Corpses piled up like a mountain, and not a single person was left alive. Hall Master North Immortal and the rest watched this scene in a daze. They did not expect the situation to change so drastically. Yi Chun charged at the few of them and smiled guiltily. "Hall Master Z, I'm sorry. I'm late. Thank you for saving my life." Emperor Yi. Hall Master North Immortal looked at him with an extremely complicated expression after he returned to his senses. His eyes were filled with sorrow. Who would have thought that the young man who killed the Jade Lake's Holy Master would grow to such an extent? An existence as powerful as the Thunderbolt Immortal Envoy, who made them despair and powerless, could not resist at all in Yi Chun's hands. He was as weak as an ant. Godfather. Shi Qianhan took a few steps forward and knelt heavily in front of Hall Master North Immortal. He said with tears in his eyes, "It's great that you're not dead." Before he came, he was extremely worried about Hall Master North Immortal. Now that he saw that the former was only injured and his life was not in danger, he could not help but cry tears of joy. "Silly child." Hall Master North Immortal patted him heavily on the shoulder. "Young master." As an excited voice sounded, a round and delicate body threw itself into Yi Chun's embrace. Yi Chun's expression froze. Subsequently, he looked at Jiao who was in his arms and said, "You're already so old, yet you're still so shameless?" Jiao blushed, but she still hugged him tightly and refused to let go. Tears gathered in her beautiful eyes. "Young master, I thought I would never see you again in this life." The little girl felt wronged as tears streamed down her face. "The old man is dead. He was killed by the Immortal Palace's palace master to protect me." There were 3 people she was most grateful to in her life. The first was Mu Kai Wei, who adopted her. The second was Yi Chun, who introduced her to cultivation. The last was the Patriarch of Light. The 2 of them were not related by blood, but the former treated her like his own granddaughter. He would grant her every request and even died for her. All right, aren't I here now?" Yi Chun shook his head and pushed her away gently. He then looked at her and said, "Don't worry, I'll avenge the Patriarch of Light." After saying that, he could not help but turn around and size up the remaining dozen or so people. Indeed, he did not see Fairy Yuching, the Patriarch of Light, and the rest. He sighed softly and looked at Home Master North Immortal. "Home Master Z, do you know the whereabouts of the Patriarch of Hell and my parents?" As soon as he said that, Home Master North Immortal and the rest rolled up their sleeves and looked at the divine consciousness imprint on their wrists. "They're still alive." Looking at the faint flickering light in the imprint, Home Master North Immortal could not help but exclaim in joy, "Emperor Yi, they're still alive." Into this chapter. Chapter 1338. In the western part of the All-Heaven region, there was a winding mountain range that spanned thousands of kilometers. This mountain range looked like a giant dragon sleeping on the ground. Below the mountain range, there was a quiet valley. The valley entrance was extremely narrow and could only allow 2 people to pass through at the same time. The nearby villagers called this place the Dragonbeard Valley. Because the valley was filled with jagged rocks, it was like a completely different world. If a normal person accidentally entered, they would never be able to leave. Adding on the fact that there were fierce beasts guarding the entrance, it became a forbidden area for the nearby villagers. At this moment, the sky above the Dragonbeard Valley was filled with dark clouds. It was as if the sky could collapse at any moment. Pressure, panic. At the entrance of the valley, there was a large group of people that surrounded the entire Dragonbeard Valley. Powerful, true energy filled the heavens and earth, making one's heart feel cold. This group of people had gathered almost a third of the elites of the All-Heaven region. There were no less than 5 soul formation cultivators and countless nascent soul cultivators. The world was completely silent. No one dared to break into the valley because anyone who did would die a strange death. Even soul formation cultivators were no exception. Boom! Amidst this stalemate, space suddenly trembled violently. The space exploded, and a hazy figure walked out of it. The figure gave off a dazzling light that made it impossible for people to look at him directly. He was as majestic as a mountain, and many people couldn't help but kneel on the ground. No one could clearly see the figure's face, but they could feel that it was a man, and a young man at that. He was incomparably powerful. He was like a celestial that descended into the mortal world, causing people's hearts to tremble. The only thing they could see was his star-like eyes. Someone from the celestial palace. Thinking about this, everyone trembled violently and knelt down on the ground. They didn't dare to show any disrespect. This was because in the heavenly purple realm, in the All-Heaven region, the celestial palace was a god high above. They ignored everything, and everyone looked up to them. At this moment, a soul formation cultivator in black walked up and knelt before the young figure. He respectfully said, "Greetings, Your Highness." As his voice fell, the silent crowd was immediately stirred up a storm in their hearts. "Your Highness." That young great figure from the Immortal Palace, the only son of the Immortal Palace Lord who was known as the #1 pride of heaven in the heavenly purple realm. Qi Huang. The young figure gazed into the valley. Is he inside? He was a man of few words and seemed to look down on everything. As soon as he spoke, everyone could tell that he was an extremely confident and powerful person. The soul formation stage elder nodded and said, "That's right, this person hidden there with his people. Because there's an old dragon helping him, we haven't been able to attack. Are you the South Mountains Dragon King?" Qi Huang seemed to be asking, but his eyes landed on the valley entrance. He said indifferently, "Southern Ridge Dragon King, you dare to help my Immortal Palace's enemy?" As soon as these words were spoken, they rumbled and exploded in the heavens and the earth like rolling thunder, and they even blasted the entire valley to the point it was on the verge of collapse. Everyone kneeled lower and lower, all of them trembling with fear. This was the dignity of Immortal Palace Lord's only son. When someone heard the words Southern Ridge Dragon King, he seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but inwardly suck in a breath of cold air. 10,000 years ago, the people of the Dang province saw a dragon fly into the sky, speak the human language, move clouds and rain, and call himself the South Mountains Dragon King. After the dragon accepted the sacrifices and worship of the people, It rode the clouds and disappeared. No one would have thought that it would hide in Dragon Beard Valley. Your Highness Chi Huang, the heavens have the virtue of cherishing life. Why are you so ruthless? At the same time, an incomparably old voice slowly came from the valley. Why don't you give this old man face and let it go? I promise that they won't be enemies with your immortal palace in the future. You refuse a toast to drink a forfeit. Chi Huang's eyes flickered and he said calmly, Today, your Dragon Beard Valley will be destroyed. As he spoke, his figure flickered and his clothes tore through the void. He directly stepped into the air towards the entrance of the valley. I like to see how you're going to stop me. His black hair was loose, and he had the aura of a monarch. At that moment, a giant hand suddenly slapped out from within the valley. The giant hand was like a dark cloud covering the sky. Stubborn fool. Chi Huang snorted coldly. A void halberd suddenly appeared in his hand. The halberd shone resplendently and surged with divine light. It smashed forward with incomparable force. Dang! The world trembled violently, and the void collapsed. A shocking streak of red blossomed, as if blood had scattered across the sky. Break! Chi Huang was incomparably terrifying. With the void halberd in his hand, he slashed towards the entrance of the valley. A deafening noise rang out, shaking the world. Boom! The entrance of the valley that everyone thought was indestructible was destroyed on the spot. Terrifying energy poured out like a flood. He was worthy of being the most monstrous descendant of the immortal palace. Countless people shivered in fear. In the next moment, Chi Huang wielded the void halberd and rushed into the valley in an incomparably domineering manner. Follow him. Seeing that one person had rushed in, the remaining people from the immortal palace looked at each other and then jumped in with murderous intent. Killing intent filled the world. In the Dragon Whisker Valley, there was a thatched hut under a waterfall. Countless deer were happily playing outside the fence. If one looked closely, they would discover that outside the grass hut, there was a middle-aged couple staring at the deer in the distance in a daze. The middle-aged couple was Yi Chen's parents. Yi Hai looked at the deer that was sizing him up timidly. He could not help but think of Yi Chun and Meng Meng. He sighed softly. I wonder where Xiao Chun is. Xiao Chun arrived at the purple world before us. Wu Lan said worriedly. Logically speaking, there should be some commotion, but why is it so calm now? At this point, he seemed to have thought of something, and his face suddenly turned pale. Old Yi, do you think something happened to Xiao Chun? Yi Hai immediately fell silent. He had witnessed the power of the immortal palace. They had only sent 2 people, but they had almost destroyed the entire ancient desolate realm. Even the old ancestor was injured because of it. Thinking to this point, Yi Hai could not help but look up at the waterfall above his head. He was worried. I wonder how the Patriarch's injuries are recovering. The Patriarch has the help of old Mr. Namling. He should be fine. Wu Lan could not help but comfort him. She was also extremely worried. Boom! Right at this moment, the entire valley shook violently. Yi Hai and his wife almost lost their balance, and their expressions changed at the same time. At the next moment, a green rainbow shot over and turned into an old man with white hair and long eyebrows and gray clothes. The old man's eyebrows were like willow branches that rippled in the wind. He held a dragon-headed walking stick in his hand, and his body trembled like a candle in the wind. Old Mr. Namling, Yi Hai and Wu Lan immediately went up to him. Seeing the blood at the corner of the former's mouth, they could not help but ask worriedly, Are you all right? Chapter 1339. The formation I set up outside has been broken. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of the long-browed old man's mouth. He sighed faintly and said, The people from the immortal palace are attacking. For the sake of your safety, you should leave quickly. Yi Hai and Wu Lan's faces paled when they heard that. This old man is useless. That's all I have to say. The long-browed old man shook his head. Then, he looked in the direction of the waterfall and moved his lips slightly, fellow yellow spring. Before he could finish speaking, a seemingly weak voice came from the waterfall. There's no need to say anything. The old ancestor already knows. Under the gazes of the 3 of them, a black-clothed youth shot down from the waterfall and immediately revealed the figure of the old ancestor Yellow Spring. At this moment, the old ancestor Yellow Spring's face was as pale as paper. He couldn't help but look at the entrance of the valley coldly. These people's noses are really like dogs. They found this place so quickly. Old ancestor, are you all right? Yihai asked worriedly. I won't die. The old ancestor grinned and then said to the long-browed old man, Fellow Nanling, thank you for taking us in this time. I won't forget it in the future. Old man, let's go. After saying that, he waved his sleeve and immediately wrapped Yihai and his wife up to leave. Where are you going? However, at this moment, a deafening voice suddenly exploded in the valley. In an instant, a golden figure streaked across the sky, approaching from afar, and finally stopped less than 100 feet away from the old ancestor Yellow Spring and the others. It was Qi Huang. He was tall, slender, and strong. His entire body was wrapped in hazy runes, and his true appearance couldn't be seen. Only his eyes were as intimidating as lightning. His black hair draped over his shoulders, and he held the void halberd in his hand. He stood proudly in the world, as if he was overlooking everything in the world. Behind him, there were countless figures with powerful auras that turned into streaks of light that shot over and surrounded the old ancestor, Yellow Spring, and the others. Their killing intent almost shook the world. Yihai and Wu Lan's expressions were extremely terrified and close to despair. The long-browed old man's expression changed slightly. Fellow Yellow Spring, this person is the only son of the Immortal Palace's Qi Daolin, Qi Huang. Turns out it's that Immortal Palace old dog's child. Old ancestor Yellow Spring narrowed his eyes as he sized up Qi Huang. A cold gleam flickered in his eyes. Your father actually only sent you. You've truly disappointed me. Qi Huang's calm and tranquil face sank a little. The hazy magic symbols on his body became more and more dazzling. Faintly, a power that could make people shiver started to disperse. This was the first time someone dared to speak to him like this. Impudent. Without waiting for him to speak, an Immortal Palace expert berated, You all dare be rude to His Highness. The rest of the experts from the Immortal Palace stared at old ancestor Yellow Spring and the others with murderous intent, as if they were waiting for Qi Huang's order. Your dog is really good at barking. Old ancestor Yellow Spring ignored that person and fixed his gaze on Qi Huang. I know you wouldn't dare to come here alone. Call out the person I've defeated. Are you that confident that I'm not your opponent? Qi Huang smiled noncommittally. Divine light surged from his body. Back then, even though you killed my Palace Lord Feng in the lower realms and even destroyed Palace Lord Hu's physical body, you were also injured. I presume that you don't have much strength left, right? You can try. Old ancestor Yellow Spring sneered. His gaze shot into the void, and his voice was like thunder. Hall Master Hua, your defeated opponent has been completely scared out of his wits by me. Does he not dare to show himself? As soon as he finished speaking, a sneer came from the void. Little Yellow Spring, do you only know how to use your tongue? Buzz. As the voice faded, a red-robed man slowly walked out of the distorted void. His eyes were like two scorching suns. As soon as he appeared, a terrifying heat was emitted from his body. Hall Master Hua, one of the 5 great Hall Masters of the Immortal Palace. Seeing the newcomer, the hearts of the people kneeling on the ground trembled. Then they all knelt on one knee. The Immortal Palace had a total of 5 Hall Masters. Their strength was second only to the Immortal Palace Master Qi Daolin. They were all at the late stage of soul formation and were proficient in wind, fire, thunder, and rain. Some people were extremely shocked. In order to deal with an injured person, His Highness Qi Huang and Hall Master Hua had to personally come. You defeated opponent. You were lucky that day to keep your worthless life. Old ancestor Yellow Spring seemed to size him up disdainfully. A hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. I thought you would need 1.5 years to recover your physical body. I didn't expect you to recover so quickly. Ha ha ha. Hall Master Hua immediately burst into laughter, shaking the surroundings. Then I have to thank His Highness Qi for finding me an excellent physical body and even taking out the Tiani soul water to help me. Tiani soul water. Old ancestor Yellow Spring's pupil shrank. I didn't expect your immortal palace to have such a thing. The so-called Tiani soul water was something that could help people recover. If someone's physical body was destroyed, they could use the Tiani soul water to recover in a short period of time. Of course, the Tiani soul water was not a divine medicine. It did not have the effect of reviving the dead. If the other party died because their lifespan was up, the Tiani soul water would be useless. Old man Namling, how dare you take in a rebel from the lower realm right under the immortal palace's nose? Hall Master will look down at the long-browed elder. Today is the day you die. The long-browed elder's expression changed slightly. He then sighed. Fine, looks like I can't avoid it today. Then, he took a step forward and charged at Hall Master Hua. Hall Master Hua, if you were still at your peak, I might be a little afraid of you. However, you've been injured this time. Although you've recovered your physical body, your strength has declined. Even if my strength has declined, killing you is still as easy as flipping my hand. Hall Master Hua smiled coldly and attacked. Roar. Under everyone's gaze, the long-browed elder let out a long roar and turned into a giant white dragon that was more than 100 meters long. Its enormous body practically filled up half the sky and blocked out all light, causing the expressions of many experts from the Immortal Palace to change greatly. A white dragon that's about to step into the mid-divine transformation stage? No wonder you're so confident to go against the Immortal Palace. Qi Huang looked around and chuckled. He looked at old ancestor Huang Quan and said, "You're only at the early divine transformation stage, yet you can kill home Master Feng who is at the late divine transformation stage. You're quite capable." At this point, an unquestionable aura surged out of his eyes. "I'll give you a chance now. If you're willing to submit to me, I can spare your life." "Bastard, you're quite arrogant." Old ancestor Huang Quan immediately became furious. "When I was dominating the world, your father was still in his mother's womb." "What a pity!" Qi Huang was not angry at all. Instead, he looked at old ancestor Huang Quan with pity. "I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. Don't blame me." Chapter 1340. Let's fight, Qi Huang said softly. His black hair was scattered, and the void halberd in his hand immediately erupted with terrifying power. It was as if an immortal king had descended into the world. Boom! The void halberd tore through the void and slashed towards the old ancestor of Yellow Spring. Terrifying runes fluctuated violently, shaking the sky. The first strike seemed to be able to make the sky collapse. So powerful. Is this the #1 genius of the Immortal Palace? Seeing this scene, the expressions of many experts from the Immortal Palace changed drastically. They had a premonition that even a trace of that terrifying power was enough to destroy them. Not only them, but even the intermediate soul formation experts from the Immortal Palace were also extremely fearful. "You two step back." The old ancestor of Yellow Spring had a serious expression. He then swept his sleeve and directly swept Yihai and Wu Lan away. "Be careful, old ancestor." Yihai was extremely worried as he exhorted. He only hated himself for not having the strength to help the old ancestor. He could only be a burden to the old ancestor. "Come at me." The old ancestor of Yellow Spring took a deep breath. Ignoring the pain of his meridians being torn, he forcefully mobilized his spiritual essence and turned it into a giant hand that slapped towards Qi Huang. Clang! The void trembled and the sound was deafening. After the two terrifying powers collided, a loud noise that sounded like a landslide immediately erupted. Thump, thump, thump. At that moment, Qi Huang took several steps back, and the void halberd in his hand trembled incessantly. The old ancestor of Yellow Spring only felt the web between his thumb and index finger go numb, and he couldn't help but frown. Qi Huang was indeed powerful. No wonder he was known as the #1 genius of the Immortal Palace. His attack, just now, was equivalent to the full strength of an intermediate soul formation cultivator. It was enough to kill any intermediate soul formation cultivator, but only made Qi Huang take a few steps back. The old ancestor of Yellow Spring had a premonition that even if he was at his full strength, it would be difficult for him to kill Qi Huang as an early soul formation cultivator. Not bad. Qi Huang's black hair fluttered in the wind. He clenched the void halberd in his hand and looked at the old ancestor of Yellow Spring with admiration. You can still unleash such power after suffering such heavy injuries. At this point, he couldn't help but shake his head and said, "Unfortunately, you can't use that kind of attack many times." Buzz. As the void trembled, Qi Huang instantly disappeared, tearing through the sky and appearing on the left side of Patriarch Yellow Spring in an extremely bizarre manner. His halberd swept across the sky and slashed at Patriarch Yellow Spring's left arm in a domineering manner. Is this the Void Rend? An Immortal Palace expert who saw this scene was first stunned, and then he couldn't help but cry out, "Your Highness actually cultivated this divine ability." The old ancestor Nether Spring's figure flashed in an unhurried manner, and he instantly avoided this lethal strike. After that, he opened his mouth and spat out a black flying sword that instantly transformed into a dark ray of light that shot out violently. The ghostly light pierced through the air, faintly carrying the intent of extinction. Qi Huang's expression changed slightly. He was very decisive and quickly retreated. At the same time, he waved the void halberd in his hand and slashed at the ghostly light. Boom! Terrifying energy immediately burst out, and Patriarch Yellow Spring was the first to be blasted away by such energy. Pooh! Scarlet blood flowed out of his mouth, and his face was completely pale. F*CKU. If I wasn't injured and exhausted in my true essence, how could I allow you to be so arrogant? Patriarch! In the distance, Yihai and Wu Lan could not help but exclaim when they saw the Patriarch vomiting blood. Then, they could not help but rush over and help the old ancestor Yellow Spring up. "Patriarch, are you all right?" Wu Lan was about to cry. "Don't worry about us. Leave quickly. They definitely can't stop you." The old ancestor Yellow Spring had done a lot for them. They really could not bear to see the former die to save them. "Patriarch, the two of us are just a burden to you. You should leave. We won't blame you." Yihai also shed tears, "As long as you see Little Chun in the future and ask him to take revenge for us." What a touching scene. As a seemingly mocking voice was heard, Qi Huang walked over again and looked down at the three of them. Qi Huang looked at the old ancestor Yellow Spring as if he was looking at ants. "I told you, you're not my match when you're injured." The old ancestor Yellow Spring's expression changed continuously. "Are you going to force me to use that move?" He was a Tribulation Almighty in his previous life, so he naturally had countless life-saving methods. However, he would not use them unless he had no other choice. "It's over," Qi Huang muttered softly and swung the void halberd in his hand at the three of them. Terrifying energy whizzed down. Wu Lan leaned tightly into Yihai's embrace. The latter also had a look of despair on his face. He hugged her tightly and smiled bitterly. "Little Chun, you unfilial son. I'm about to die, but you're not coming to send me off." Looking at that scene, the struggle in the old ancestor Yellow Spring's eyes no longer existed. Instead, it was replaced by a hint of determination. He seemed to be muttering, "Fellow Yi, if I don't die, you must find 1,800 young models for me." Just as his finger seals were changing crazily, the space in front of him suddenly distorted violently. Subsequently, the wind and clouds changed, and thunder rumbled in all directions. Vaguely, a skinny figure shot out from the distorted space and appeared in the sky above their heads. That's the old ancestor Yellow Spring's movements froze. He looked at the extremely blurry figure in a daze. "Fellow Yi, it's that brat, Little Chun." Yihai, who was already in despair, was also stunned. Then, he could not help but smile bitterly. Is it an illusion before death? At the same time, Hall Master Hua, the long-browed elder, and countless Immortal Palace experts who were fighting suddenly raised their heads and looked at the figure in the sky. In the void, a thin figure stood proudly. He only extended 2 fingers and caught Qi Huang's void halberd that was rapidly slashing down. Qi Huang revealed a shocked expression. Before he could react, the figure flicked his finger lightly. In an instant, Chi Huang felt his arm go numb. Boom! The void halberd immediately let out a loud sound before turning into fragments that filled the sky. At the same time, it was accompanied by a torrent of spiritual energy that belonged to a spirit treasure. Catching the void halberd with his bare hands, shattering a spirit weapon with 2 fingers, the terrifying attack from the Immortal Palace's #1 genius, Chi Huang, was so easily broken. Blurg! Chi Huang spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale and shocked. The world suddenly fell silent. Yi Chen landed on the ground and looked at his father, Yi Hai, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Dad, how did I become an unfilial son?" "Little Chun, is it really you?" Yi Hai rubbed his eyes, not daring to believe everything. What he said earlier was nothing more than to vent the despair in his heart. He did not expect Yi Chen to appear as soon as he shouted it. Wulan was crying tears of joy. Yi Chen smiled lightly and turned to look at the old ancestor Yellow Spring. Under the latter's dumbfounded expression, he said with a faint smile, "Old ancestor, I heard your wish." "Ancestor, I've heard that wish of yours. Don't worry, I'll satisfy you after this." Chapter 1341. Above Dragonbeard Valley, the sky was filled with wind and clouds, and the ground was trembling. Under everyone's gazes, the skinny figure quietly stood on the ground. He allowed the monstrous storm to strike him, but he did not move at all. When he saw Yi Chen's face clearly, the Patriarch of Hell finally squeezed out a smile on his tense expression. "It's good that you're here. I didn't let you down after all." With that, his head tilted and he fell heavily to the ground. He seemed to have fainted. Yi Chen walked forward quickly and helped him up. He channeled some spiritual energy into his body, and his initially calm face had a hint of seriousness. Yi Hai walked over quickly and asked worriedly, "Xiao Chun, is the Patriarch all right? His injuries are severe." Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief and said while frowning, "All the meridians in his body are broken, and his primordial spirit is almost exhausted. If I were a step later, the consequences." Yi Hai and Wulan could not help but cry when they heard that. They looked extremely guilty. "It's all our fault. If it weren't for protecting your mother and me, the Patriarch wouldn't have." "Xiao Chun, you must not let anything happen to the Patriarch. The Patriarch has done our Yi family a great favor." Wulan cried on the spot. Buzz, at that moment the space shook violently. Then, several figures shot over and landed next to Yi Chen. It was Yi Wushuang and the rest who had arrived later. Even Yi Wushuang was shocked when he saw the Patriarch's miserable appearance. "What's wrong with the Patriarch? Take care of him." Yi Chen took out a medicinal pill and fed it to the Patriarch. He then handed it to him and said coldly, "I want everyone to pay the price today." With that, he slowly turned around, and his eyes were suddenly covered by endless anger and coldness. He slowly walked out and raised his eyes to look at Chi Huang in the distance. A cold smirk appeared at the corner of his lips, as if he was filled with monstrous killing intent. The temperature between heaven and earth seemed to have cooled down at that moment. Chi Huang looked at Yi Chen with a grim expression. "Who are you? How dare you interfere with the Immortal Palace's matters?" He frowned slightly. He felt that he could not see through Yi Chen. That was the reason why he was on high alert. "Your Highness, he's the rebel from the lower realm, Yi Chen." From afar, the Immortal Palace's temple master, Huo, rushed over and stood side by side with him. He stared at Yi Chen coldly. Immortal Envoy Feng died in his hands. "Oh, so he's also a rebel from the ancient barren world." Chi Huang seemed to have thought of something when he heard that. He looked at Yi Chen again and said with a sneer, "My Immortal Palace has spent a lot of effort to find you. I thought you were hiding, but I didn't expect you to dare to appear. Since this Yi has appeared, there's no need for you all to leave. This could be considered a gift from this Yi to the Immortal Palace." Yi Chen laughed out of anger. A cold gleam appeared in his eyes as he took a step forward and charged at Chi Huang. Boom! It was this seemingly ordinary step, but it caused the space within 1,000 feet to collapse. At the same time, a towering killing intent soared into the sky. At that moment, Qi Huang's expression finally changed because he felt chills running down his spine as Yi Chen's aura locked onto him. He had only felt this kind of feeling from his father, the master of the Immortal Palace. Even the 5 Hall Masters had never given him this kind of feeling. "Your Highness, step back. Leave this person to me." At the critical moment, Hall Master Hua shouted. Then, he moved and took the initiative to face Yi Chen. A terrifying pressure erupted immediately. His late-stage God transformation stage cultivation base was undoubtedly revealed. "You're courting death." Yi Chen snorted coldly. At this moment, his eyes lit up and his killing intent surged. He no longer concealed his cultivation base. He wanted to kill this person completely. Boom! His punch actually stirred up a hurricane, accompanied by lightning and thunder. Its might was shocking, as if the world was collapsing. So just mid-stage God transformation stage. Sensing Yi Chen's cultivation base, Hall Master Hua sneered immediately. "A mere mid-stage God transformation stage dares to attack me?" Boom! He also threw a punch forward, and it immediately turned into a huge fist wrapped in terrifying flames. Fire God's wrath. All the water vapor between heaven and earth evaporated. Boom! Heaven and earth trembled, and the void shook incomparably, accompanied by a terrifying true origin storm. Seeing this scene, whether it was Qi Huang and the other people from the Immortal Palace, Yi Wushuang, or the Patriarch of Green Spirit and the others, their gazes froze. One was a mid-stage God transformation stage defector from the lower realm, and the other was a late-stage God transformation stage Master Hua from the Immortal Palace. Who would win between the two of them? Especially the Patriarch of Green Spirit and the rest. They were forced to submit to Yi Chen. If Yi Chen was no match, one could imagine how miserable their fate would be in the future. Clang! With a loud explosion, the two fists collided heavily. Sparks flew in all directions, and their might shook the heavens. Buzz! At that moment, everyone felt a piercing pain in their eardrums, and their eyes felt as if they were burning. They could not help but narrow their eyes subconsciously, and even blocked their hearing. Otherwise, their eardrums would definitely rupture. Thud, 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 under everyone's gazes. Hall Master Hua's body seemed to have suffered a heavy blow as he was sent flying thousands of meters away. Then, he let out a muffled groan. The flesh and bones of his right hand had completely exploded, and hot blood dripped onto the ground, burning everything. It was a ghastly sight. On the other hand, Yi Chen was like a towering ancient tree rooted to the ground, unmoving. His white hair was scattered, and his eyes were so cold that they could pierce one's soul. His fists surged with a dazzling golden light, and his entire body surged with blood energy. He was like an immortal king descending to the mortal world, looking down on everything. Almost at that moment, many people's expressions changed. Even Qi Huang, who had retreated to the side to watch the battle, was no exception. Hall Master Hua was at a disadvantage in his first clash with Yi Chen. How is that possible? One was at mid-stage God transformation stage, while the other was at late-stage God transformation stage. They were not on the same level at all. Countless people were in disbelief. What powerful physical strength! Temple Master Hua could not help but inhale a breath of cold air after finally dispersing the terrifying force from Yi Chen's punch. He looked at Yi Chen again. "Now, I believe that you have the ability to kill that useless wind immortal messenger. However, no matter how powerful your physical body is, you're still only at mid-stage God transformation stage. What can you do to me?" Boom! He suddenly let out a long roar, then pressed his palms together and roared. Flame Dharma body, as urgent as the command, condense. As his voice fell, boom, 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 endless flames surged out from his palms and gathered in front of Qi Huang, condensing into a flame shadow. The flame shadow was 30 meters tall. It seemed to be a mysterious creature born from magma, as if it wanted to destroy everything. Is this Hall Master Hua's flame Dharma body? When an Immortal Palace powerhouse saw this, he could not help but gasp. Rumor has it that Hall Master Hua once went deep into the Earth's core and obtained a strange egg born from magma in a world of magma. Then, he refined it into a Dharma body. End of this chapter. Chapter 1342. Hall Master Hoa is getting serious. Chi Huang narrowed his eyes. There was a hint of arrogance in his eyes when he looked at Yi Chen again. Among the 5 Hall Masters of the Immortal Palace, Hall Master Hoa is the strongest. I like to see how you die. Boom! In an instant, the gigantic flame figure walked toward Yi Chen step by step. Every step it took, a few huge pits would appear on the ground. One of them was charred black. How difficult is it to kill you? Yi Chen's killing intent was revealed. His hair flew in anger, and his eyes were filled with cold lightning. As he raised his hand, terrifying lightning poured out from his palm. Cloud with a flip of the hand, lightning with a flip of the hand. He seemed to be chanting death as he moved seriously, collapsing universe lightning strike. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, a sea of lightning gathered. Its aura was destructive, causing everyone's hair to stand on end. What's that? Seeing this, everyone's expression changed. Heavenly might, brilliant heavenly might. Under such a terrifying scene, countless people felt insignificant from the bottom of their hearts. They could not help but prostrate themselves on the ground. Lightning technique? The Thunder Immortal Envoy's lightning technique. At that moment, Hall Master Hua's expression changed drastically. He never thought that other than the Immortal Palace's Thunder Immortal Envoy, there would be someone who was proficient in such a violent lightning technique. Die! Yi Chen's palm shot out, and endless lightning gathered into a giant lightning palm. It was like a cloud that covered the sky as it whistled down at the flame figure. Roar! The flame figure roared as its arms stretched across the sky, charging straight at the lightning palm as if it wanted to tear it apart. Boom! The lightning palm landed on its body, and a faint scream of pain exploded in the air. Then, an ear-piercing crackling sound rang out. Under everyone's gazes, the flame figure was completely wrapped in lightning, and its body fell heavily to the ground. Rumble! In an instant, everything within a radius of 3,000 feet was set ablaze. Wah! Hall Master Hua's face suddenly turned pale. Then, he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His expression instantly became extremely dispirited. His avatar was destroyed, and he was also severely injured. Deathly silence. The world suddenly fell into a deathly silence. He was defeated. Temple Master Hua was at the late Divine Transformation stage, but he still lost to a mid-Divine Transformation stage cultivator after using his flame Dharma body? How is this possible? Countless people found it hard to believe. Chi Huang's originally confident expression froze, and his handsome facial features became slightly distorted. They're both in the mid-soul formation stage, so why is he able to defeat the Divine Fire Palace Master? Why? It was almost a roar. He, Chi Huang, had cultivated for less than 1,000 years, yet he had already entered the mid-stage of the soul formation stage. He was known as the #1 genius of the Immortal Palace, and even the Firmament Purple Realm. Even so, he could only fight Hall Master Hua to a draw at most. However, Yi Chen, who was also at the mid-stage soul transformation stage, had defeated Hall Master Hua. It was almost unacceptable to him. It's over. Yi Chen's murderous, intense sword. His sky-encompassing hand slammed toward Temple Master Hua. He wanted to annihilate him completely. Pooh! Caught off guard, Temple Master Hua was struck heavily. He let out a blood-curdling scream as his body was sent flying and collapsed in midair. Whoosh! His primordial spirit quickly escaped from it, as if it was trying to escape. However, Yi Chen hugged him with his arms. Boom! A terrifying vortex immediately appeared in the air, and an irresistible, devouring force swept out. No! Hall Master Hua's primordial spirit roared unwillingly, but it was instantly sucked into the vortex, and his soul was completely destroyed. At that moment, the heavens and earth were dead silent. Everyone's faces were overwhelmed with shock as dense disbelief surged in their eyes. Dead. Hall Master Hua, one of the 5 Hall Masters of the Immortal Palace, was dead. Moreover, his soul had been destroyed. How is this possible? Countless people roared madly in their hearts. The patriarch of Green Spirit and the rest, who were originally extremely nervous, were so excited that they almost cried out. They never thought that Yi Chun would be so powerful. With his cultivation base at the mid-stage soul formation stage, he killed Hall Master Hua in an incomparably domineering manner. Hall Master Hua, Qi Huang roared angrily. Before this, he had killed 2 of the Immortal Palace's Hall Masters and severely injured one. Then, the Patriarch of Hell killed another Hall Master and severely injured another. Yi Chun had killed another Hall Master. After careful calculation, there was only 1 Hall Master left among the 5 Hall Masters of the Immortal Palace. Moreover, this Hall Master was still in a half-crippled state. At this moment, he suddenly felt a cold gaze lock onto him. His body immediately tensed up. Then, he looked at Yi Chun, who was walking toward him, with an extremely ugly expression. As Yi Chun walked, his expression changed, and he said, "You're the son of the Immortal Palace's master? So what if I am?" Qi Huang snorted coldly, unwilling to show weakness. "The Immortal Palace has underestimated you, and even the ancient desolate realm. First, there was Yi Dongli. Then there was the zombie known as Ing. Then there was the Patriarch of Hell, and finally there was you." At this point, he could not help but narrow his eyes and say, "I have to say, the heavens really care for you rebels from the lower realm." "Rebels?" Yi Chun sneered. "I like that name. What do you mean by rebels? You're someone who defies the heavens. Your immortal palace will also be destroyed by us rebels. Shameless boasting." With a cold snort, more than a dozen powerful auras rushed over from all directions, protecting Qi Huang tightly within them. These 12 people were all early-stage God transformation stage cultivators. They were all wearing the attire of the Immortal Palace, and all of them unleashed their cultivation bases. "Your Highness, leave this person to us," the sinister-looking old man in the lead said respectfully. Then, he looked at Yi Chun coldly. "This person must have exhausted himself after fighting with Hall Master Hua. I don't believe that we, 12 early-stage God transformation stage cultivators, can't kill him." The expressions of the Patriarch of Green Spirit and the rest changed when they heard that. Yi Wushuang's sword Qi was like a rainbow. "Do you think we're dead?" The sinister-looking old man's expression changed when he heard that. If Yi Wushuang had not spoken, he would have ignored the former. Now that he looked at it, there was still Yi Wushuang, the Patriarch of Green Spirit, the Heavenly Ghost Sex Patriarch, and 1,000 Illusion Fairy in Yi Chun's camp. "Step down." Yi Chun spoke slowly. His cold voice was bone-chilling. "I'd like to see if they can kill me." Yi Wushuang could not help but smile. "All right." Then, under everyone's gazes, he retreated into the distance. He carried the little girl Meng Meng and acted like he would not interfere. Arrogant. The sinister-looking old man was pleasantly surprised, but he was even more furious. Everyone, no matter how powerful this person is, he's still a mid-stage God transformation stage cultivator. Let's kill him together. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, a black-robed old man attacked instantly. His divine consciousness was like a vast ocean as it surged toward Yi Chun. Attack. In an instant, the remaining 11 people attacked together, activating their spirit treasures and divine abilities. In an instant, a terrifying aura swept through the air, as if heaven and earth had just been created. The battle was about to begin. End of this chapter. Chapter 1344. I'm waiting for you. This voice seemed to have transcended reincarnation and came from beyond the endless stars. It was extremely profound and vast. The sudden scene shocked everyone. Clearly, they did not expect that someone would still attack Yi Chun at this point. It's the master of the Immortal Palace. The Patriarch of Green Spirit and the rest trembled slightly. They seemed to have thought of something, and their eyes were filled with fear. Even the Heavenly Ghost Sex Patriarch and the rest were no exception. Too powerful. That sword strike just now had caused them extreme pressure and shock. Even a trace of the aura that leaked out made them feel like their souls were about to scatter. Yi Wushuang let out a furious roar. His black hair, turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye, as stunning as blood. "Get out here!" His white clothes fluttered, and his red hair soared into the sky. His eyes shot into the sky as he let out a godlike roar. However, after that voice, the world returned to peace. Even Qi Huang disappeared without a trace, along with the blood-colored formation. He didn't descend with his real body. I think he used a flying sword to sneak attack me. Yi Chen stared at where Qi Huang had disappeared and could not help but sneer. This father and son pair are really cunning. One made me think he was going to fight with his life on the line, but he severed his arms and used the blood sacrifice secret technique in an attempt to escape. Even so, the master of the Immortal Palace knew that Qi Huang couldn't escape from me, so he chose the most critical moment to sneak attack me. Hearing that, Yi Wushuang's aura immediately dissipated, and his red hair returned to white. He said, "Big brother, was that the master of the Immortal Palace just now? It should be him." Yi Chen's eyes flashed imperceptibly through that attack just now. This person's strength should be its stage god transformation. Stage god transformation. Yi Wushuang's expression froze. "Big brother, you've only recovered to mid-stage god transformation. If you fight him, I'm afraid there will be a fierce battle." No matter what, although Qi Huang escaped this time, I've figured out the strength of this master of the Immortal Palace. Yi Chen nodded lightly. Subsequently, his gaze echoed between heaven and earth. Eventually, it landed on the motionless Immortal Palace army. A cold gleam surged in his eyes. "Kill them all." Then, he landed on the ground, carried Patriarch Yellow Spring into the mountain, and raised his hand to set up a formation to heal him. As soon as he left, the battle immediately broke out again. Ancestor Green Spirit and the others attacked one after another, doing their best to suppress and kill the Immortal Palace army. In an instant, blood flowed like a river. At this point, Ancestor Green Spirit and the others no longer had any misgivings. After all, the Immortal Palace would not rest until one of them was dead. At the same time, news about the Dragon Beard Valley spread like wildfire across the 4 domains, setting off a huge storm. Using a terrifying lightning divine ability to kill Immortal Palace's Hall Master Hua, the 12 early-stage soul formation experts from the Immortal Palace have all been killed. He forced Immortal Palace's young master Qi Huang to break off his own arms and use a blood sacrifice to leave, not dying from Immortal Palace Lord Qi Daolin's fatal strike. This piece of heavy news swept across the entire firmament purple world. Who exactly is this Yi Chen? I heard that this person came from the lower realm, the ancient desolate world. He's only in his 20s, but he was able to kill Hall Master Hua, one of the 5 Hall Masters of the Immortal Palace. He even slaughtered 12 early-stage soul formation experts from the Immortal Palace. He's simply terrifying, killing early-stage soul formation experts like slaughtering dogs. This person is too powerful. Even the villain wanted by the Immortal Palace a few days ago can't compare to him, right? Countless people discussed animatedly. The upper echelons of the various cultivation sects and cultivation families were all alarmed. This news was simply too shocking. For a moment, all the forces sent people to investigate Yi Chen's origins. One had to know that ever since the Immortal Palace was established, it had used absolute strength and supreme methods to suppress the firmament purple world. Whether it was the cultivation sects or the cultivation families, they all had to worship it and look up to it. It could be said that in the entire firmament purple world, the Immortal Palace was the heavens, and even more so, the immortals. No one dared to show the slightest disrespect. Over the past 10,000 years, countless people had tried to go against the Immortal Palace, but they had all died like ants trying to shake a tree. Even Yi Dongli from 10,000 years ago had only killed 2 immortal envoys from the Immortal Palace before he was suppressed by the Immortal Palace Lord. However, now, someone could make the Immortal Palace pay such a heavy price. How could this not shock everyone? This person killed so many powerhouses from the Immortal Palace, causing great damage to the Immortal Palace. He will definitely suffer the endless anger of the immortal palace. An old monster who had hidden from the world shook his head and said, "Can he change the situation of the firmament purple world for 10,000 years? The barren land of the lower realm can produce such a monster." An old ancestor from a forest said in shock, "It's a pity. If this person could keep a low profile for thousands of years, he might really have the ability to shake the immortal palace. This person is dead. Fighting against the immortal palace alone is no different from an ant trying to shake a tree." Some forces who were not optimistic shook their heads. The firmament purple world is going to be chaotic. After a sect's upper echelon received the news, he could not help but take a deep breath. "From now on, my divine fist sect will seal the mountain for 100 years. No one is allowed to go out. My sky-severing sect will seal the mountain for 100 years. My Mu River Yuchi family will seal the mountain for 100 years. It seemed like this order was spread throughout the entire firmament purple world at the same time. Everyone expected that there would be a battle between Yi Chun and the Immortal Palace. In order not to be involved, they could only seal the mountain. However, there were also forces loyal to the Immortal Palace that headed to the Immortal Palace, as if they were ready to listen to orders at any time. Dusk Region, Kangwu Qin family. What? Mr. Yi killed a palace master from the Immortal Palace? He even slaughtered 12 soul formation powerhouses from the Immortal Palace? Qin Song and the others who received the news were completely stunned. Whether it was the palace master of the Immortal Palace or the soul formation powerhouses, they were like immortals in the sky to them. Now, they were slaughtered by Yi Chan like grass? I didn't expect Mr. Yi to come from the lower realm. Qin Shui's beautiful eyes widened. Didn't the ancestral records say that the people of the lower realm are all barbarians? Why are they still cultivating martial arts? It's the Qin family's fault. Qin Song and the elders of the Qin family looked at each other and saw a trace of shock in each other's eyes. Before this, they had mistaken Yi Chun as the young master of the Qingling sect. Then, at the banquet at the city governor's mansion, Yi Chun's identity was exposed by the real young master of the Qingling sect. At that time, they felt that they were finished. Unexpectedly, Yi Chun killed the young master of the Qingling sect and killed the powerhouses from the 4 major sections. He even killed the Heavenly Ghost sect's patriarch and forced the Qingling sect's patriarch to submit. Even so, they still felt that Yi Chun was no match for the Thunder Immortal Envoy in the Dusk region. It was because the Thunder Immortal Envoy was from the Immortal Palace. However, before they could hear anything about the Thunder Immortal Envoy, they received the news that Yi Chun had killed the Palace Master of the Immortal Palace. How could they not be horrified by this? End of this chapter. Chapter 1345. All Heaven Region, Heavenly Mountain. Heavenly Mountain was located at the center of the All Heaven Region. It was surrounded by dozens of Spirit Mountain ranges and was facing the sea to the south. Rumor had it that tens of thousands of years ago, a heavenly treasure fell into this place, and the Celestial Palace was born. As far as the eye could see, a boundless spirit mist suffused the mountain, and essence energy surged like dragons, decorating this beautiful spirit mountain that enveloped an area of several tens of thousands of kilometers, making it seem like a paradise on earth. Within the mountain, there was an enormous palace that looked like a heavenly palace. It was incomparably grand, solemn, and dignified. The atmosphere in the core of the palace was very depressing. If one looked closely, they would find a figure sitting on the ground. This figure was wearing a purple and gold robe. He had silver hair, and his eyes were closed. Although he did not move at all, and there was not the slightest bit of true yuan fluctuation coming from his body, the pressure that was faintly emitted from him caused the surrounding space to freeze. I miscalculated. As a murmuring voice rang out, the figure slowly opened his eyes. A bolt of lightning flashed in his eyes, as if he was surprised. This person was the master of the Celestial Palace, Qi Daolin. At the same time, a hoarse and old voice rang out. This child is outside of my divinations. Perhaps it's a trap set up by the heavenly laws back then. Heavens, Qi Daolin chuckled, and an aura that could freeze everything surged in the depths of his eyes. Didn't the heavens collapse to stop you all from invading the celestial burial planet? Could it be that she had already set up this trap before that? As he finished speaking, he turned around and looked at the stone wall before him. There was a ball of green light moving. Very likely, the green light turned into an ugly face. Don't forget, although the heavens are dead, they still left a chance of survival. Wasn't the girl I told you to capture her chance of survival? The incarnation of the heavens. Hearing this, Chi Daolin's eyes narrowed. My celestial palace has been planning for so many years. We can't allow this person to appear. Your celestial palace is in danger right now. The former said, I divined that Yidongli's corpse has disappeared. This person came from the same world as me, so he can't be underestimated. Chi Daolin frowned and said nothing. Then there's that Ing from a few days ago. He seems to have cultivated the 3 pure ones technique. You didn't kill him that day. Once he successfully fuses with the Dharma body in the black coffin, I'm afraid you won't be a match for him. The face formed by the green fluorescent light seemed to be distorted. Lastly, there's also the man with the surname Yi. He was able to kill Home Master Hua and even survived your fatal attack. I'm afraid his combat strength is on par with yours. Enough! Chi Daolin suddenly snorted coldly and said in a cold voice, Surnamed Mu, if I hadn't saved you back then, your soul would have been destroyed long ago. Now, I've done all of this according to your request. At this point, do you only know how to blame me? The giant green face cackled. I told you long ago that your son is a good-for-nothing. Instead of placing your hopes on him, why don't you help me? Once I recover, I will be invincible in this world. Hearing those words, Chi Daolin seemed to be unable to bear it and closed his eyes. His face faintly twisted and struggled. Daoist Chi, you're a smart man. The giant green face's voice was full of bewitching power. Although you and I enjoy a lifespan of thousands of years, there will be a day when our time comes. In front of longevity, what is a mere son? At this point, he couldn't help but sneer. You still have less than 50 years of lifespan. If you can't step into the void training stage, you will die in meditation. Your thousands of years of bitter cultivation will go down the drain. Phew! At this moment, the formation outside suddenly sounded, and then there was an extremely respectful voice, reporting to Hall Master. His Highness has returned, I know. Chi Daolin's voice was extremely calm as he responded. The giant green face on the wall said again, Daoist Chi, there's not much time left for you. Hearing that, Chi Daolin's body trembled slightly. Then he closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and slowly walked out of the place where he cultivated in seclusion. In the solemn hall, Chi Huang, who was covered in blood, knelt on one knee and said while breathing heavily, Father, your son is useless. This time, we lost more than half of the experts of the Immortal Palace. Since he was a child, Chi Daolin had been extremely strict with him, so he knew that his performance this time would probably arouse the monstrous anger of the former. It's okay. However, to his surprise, Chi Daolin smiled faintly. This time, I miscalculated. You can't be blamed. Father, Chi Huang couldn't help but look up at him, but what he saw was a gentle gaze like that of a loving father. He had never felt such a gaze from Chi Daolin before. Thinking of this, his eyes were slightly red, and he was a little moved. Come with me. I have something to say to you. Chi Daolin smiled gently, then slowly turned around and waved his sleeve. Immediately, a stone door appeared very abruptly. Forbidden area. Seeing this, Chi Huang's pupils couldn't help but shrink violently. This stone door was concealed by a formation and was known as the Forbidden Area of the Immortal Palace. It was rumored that it was the place where Chi Daolin cultivated in seclusion. No one had ever entered, not even him. Unexpectedly, his father wanted him to go in. Thinking of this, Chi Huang's heart was a little excited. He immediately got up and followed Chi Daolin in. Half an hour later, the stone door opened again, and 2 figures slowly walked out. It was Chi Huang and his father. However, if one looked closely, they would find that Chi Huang's temperament had undergone an earth-shaking change. If he had removed all his cultivation before and was gentle like an elegant young master, then the current him was full of monstrous evil energy. That evil energy seemed to be the reincarnation of an ancient demon. Qi Huang moved his body, then closed his eyes and revealed an intoxicated expression. The feeling of having a body is wonderful. Qi Daolin's face twitched incomparably behind him, and he said, almost dripping blood, "If this plan fails, you know what I'll do." "Don't worry." Qi Huang immediately showed a look of impatience. "Don't forget, you still have that brat's woman and brother in your hands. Under such circumstances, how would that brat dare to act rashly? I know you're heartbroken, but you also know that I originally wanted the child in the belly of the woman surnamed Su. He was the best furnace for me to possess." At this point, his expression softened and he said, "But that little evil creature's self-awareness seemed to have sensed danger, and it dragged on for nearly 2 years without being born. What should we do next?" Qi Daolin said in a low voice. The other party was right. The best furnace was the fetus. For this reason, the immortal palace had waited for 2 years, but the child had not been born yet. Very simple. Qi Huang grinned, and a touch of evil appeared at the corner of his mouth. The dual cultivation ceremony will be held as scheduled. Once I devour the pure Yin energy in that woman's body, I will definitely be able to recover to my peak. End of this chapter. Chapter 1346. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, time passed by bit. Ever since the news of Dragonbeard Valley shook the entire vast purple world, everyone was surprised to find that there was no more news about Yichun. What puzzled them even more was that after experiencing such a heavy loss, the immortal palace actually remained silent. It did not erupt with monstrous rage like everyone had imagined. Quiet. The entire immortal palace was strangely quiet. This made many people speculate if the immortal palace was afraid of Yi Chen's strength, so they held back, or if they had reached some sort of compromise. However, the quieter it was, the more people felt that a storm was brewing. At a certain time, it would sweep through the entire vast purple world. The undercurrents were surging, and killing intent was ready to be unleashed. In the sky above Dragonbeard Valley, the wind and clouds in all directions suddenly surged and gathered together. Terrifying lightning was brewing within. This earth-shattering commotion shook the surroundings. When countless forces in the all-heaven region sensed it, they all gasped in shock. A nascent soul cultivator is transcending the God, transformation, heavenly tribulation. The ones who felt it the most were none other than Yi Wushuang and the rest. The patriarch of Green Spirit retreated into the distance and looked at the sky in shock. At that place, a black-clothed young man stepped out and pointed at the thunderclouds. "Scatter for the patriarch." Buzz. The void exploded as if it was crying. The daunting thunderclouds immediately disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, the sky was once again clear for thousands of kilometers. Congratulations to the patriarch for returning to God transformation stage. Yi Chen's body flashed, and he appeared in the air immediately. He stood next to the black-haired young man and smiled sincerely. The black-haired young man turned around slowly. His eyes were filled with gratitude when he looked at Yi Chen. "I have to thank you, fellow Yi. If not for you, I'm afraid the patriarch would have died. There's no need to thank me." Yi Chen forced a smile and said, "In order to protect my parents, you almost died. You even caused your cultivation base to drop to nascent soul. I've only sacrificed a 10,000th of what I've done, 5 days." He had spent a full 5 days to heal the patriarch's injuries. He had even used up all his spirit stones and savings to help him step back in a God transformation stage. That's true. When Patriarch Yellow Spring heard this, he immediately chuckled. There's indeed no need for thanks between us. At this moment, a light drizzle suddenly began to fall from the sky. The rain actually contained rich spiritual energy and the essence of the sun and moon. It's actually Emperor Molasses. Yi Chen and the Patriarch of Hell spoke in unison. Ha ha ha. The Patriarch of Yellow Spring then laughed out loud and said, "Fellow Yi, as the saying goes, misfortune and fortune depend on each other, and misfortune lurks within misfortune. After my realm fell and I recovered. I actually triggered the Emperor Molasses. At this point, he couldn't help but look down at Yi Hai, Wu Lan, and the others. Old Master, hurry up and absorb it. If you miss it, it'll be gone. What is Emperor Essence? Yi Hai did not understand. Even Ancestor Green Spirit and the others were at a loss. Yi Chun explained while smiling when he met their gazes. After a nascent soul cultivator steps into the God transformation stage and transcends the tribulation, there's a 1 in a billion chance that he'll touch heaven and earth and send down the Emperor Molasses. At this point, he added, and this Emperor Molasses contains extremely rich essence of the sun and moon, as well as spiritual energy of heaven and earth. If ordinary people bathe in it, they'll be able to cure all kinds of illnesses and prolong their lifespans. If foreign living beings bathe in it, they'll be able to gain wisdom in advance. As he spoke, many exotic beasts and plants in the valley immediately swarmed towards this place. Hearing that, Yi Hai immediately stopped hesitating. He pulled Wu Lan into the rain and allowed the rain to wash them. The little girl in Wu Lan's arms was extremely happy. The eyes of the Patriarch of Green Spirit and the rest turned red. They hurriedly took out a large cauldron that looked like a wash basin, trying to use the Emperor Molasses. Seeing that Yi Hai and the rest were actually using the Emperor Molasses as bathing water, the 3 of them felt their hearts ache as they received it. What a waste! What a waste! The Patriarch of Hell shook his head after seeing that. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. He then looked at Yi Chun and said seriously, has there been any movement from the Immortal Palace these few days? No. Yi Chun's gaze turned cold. I thought the Immortal Palace would attack me while I was healing you. I didn't expect them to be able to endure it. It's been hard on you. The Patriarch of Hell smiled guiltily. I know you're eager to save your wife, but you still chose to stay and heal me. Fellow Yi, at this moment, an old man with long eyebrows flew over and cupped his fists at him. The Immortal Palace has said that the dual cultivation ceremony will be held as usual. Tomorrow will be the 7th day. Boom! Monstrous killing intent soared into the sky from Yi Chen's body like a storm. It actually tore all the clouds in the sky apart. Tomorrow, he seemed to murmur as he closed his eyes. Deeply inhaling a breath of air, he slowly opened his eyes. A long time later, his indifferent and deep voice resounded across this region. Then we'll kill our way into the Immortal Palace tomorrow. As soon as he said that, Yi Wushuang, the Patriarch of Green Spirit, and the rest trembled violently before responding in unison. This time, I'll personally accompany you. The Patriarch of Hell sneered. I'd like to see what kind of abilities this Immortal Palace Master has to dare capture your woman. Yi Hai and Wu Lan were even more excited. Ming Ming burst into tears, and her tears could not stop. I'm finally going to see my mother. Wu Lan hugged her tightly subconsciously. On the last day, Yi Chun made sufficient preparations to save Su Yuhan. He taught the Patriarch of Green Spirit and the rest their abilities one after another. Be it the Patriarch of Green Spirit or the Heavenly Ghost Sect, their lives were in his hands. He was not afraid that they would betray him. Meanwhile, under the guidance of the Patriarch of Hell, Xiaohei finally stepped into God transformation stage. His strength had increased by more than 10 times compared to before. Initially, Yi Chen did not want Yi Hai and Wu Lan to follow him. However, the 2 elders were very determined this time, so he could only give up. That night, everyone was sleepless. That night, Yi Chen spent a lot of time with his daughter. Finally, the 7th day arrived. When a ray of sunlight shone through the clouds in the sky and shone on the ground through the dense forest, Yi Chen, who was sitting cross-legged on the top of the mountain, lowered his head and looked at his daughter, who was snuggling in his arms. Yi Chen, who was sitting cross-legged at the top of the mountain, lowered his head to look at his daughter, who was snuggling in his embrace. The little girl had fallen asleep when the sky was almost bright. There were still tears at the corner of her eyes. Yi Chen carried her and stood up slowly. His figure drew an extremely slender shadow under the blinding sunlight. He looked like a god. Yi Wushuang, the Patriarch of Hell, the Patriarch of Green Spirit, and the rest were already standing side by side below. Their auras surged into the sky as they looked at him silently, as if waiting for his order. Let's go. Yichen lifted his head. There were two balls of golden flames jumping in his eyes. Subsequently, they were covered by endless killing intent. It was time to settle all the grudges with the Immortal Palace. P.S. Chapter 3 has been updated for today. Thank you for your support. The climax has officially arrived. Allow me to organize my thoughts. End of this chapter. Chapter 1347. The Immortal Palace's dual cultivation ceremony had arrived. Almost the moment Yi Chun and the others set off from Dragonbeard Valley, the four regions of the firmament purple world moved at the same time. The news that the Immortal Palace was about to hold the dual cultivation ceremony had already been spread throughout the four regions by the four immortal envoys overseeing the four regions 7 days ago. As soon as the sky brightened, countless immortal sects and aristocratic families in the entire firmament purple world moved out. The upper echelons of the various sects brought congratulatory gifts and people straight to the Immortal Palace. Even though the news that Yi Chun had caused the Immortal Palace to lose more than half of its people, it still could not stop these people from making their decisions and moving forward. This was because in the firmament purple world, the Immortal Palace was supreme. Tens of thousands of years of majesty was deeply rooted in their hearts. Therefore, in their opinion, the Immortal Palace was not something a mere Yi Chun could shake. Most importantly, there were rumors that the woman who was about to marry the Immortal Palace's young master was suspected to be Yi Chun's wife. As soon as this news spread, even those forces who did not intend to participate could not help but mobilize their people. This was because many people knew that if this news was true, then the Immortal Palace hated Yi Chun for stealing his wife. Moreover, it was an open and above-board provocation. In other words, there might be a battle between Yi Chun and the Immortal Palace. How could they miss such a grand occasion? Tongtian Mountain. Before noon, the entire Tongtian Mountain was already filled with a sea of people. In the sky, there were countless sword lights and flying boats that covered the sky. Nascent soul cultivators, who were usually extremely rare to everyone, could be seen everywhere at this moment, like carps crossing the river. As the void trembled, there were even soul formation cultivators passing by. Among the crowded sea of people, congratulatory voices could be heard from time to time. There were also all sorts of treasure lights that shot into the sky. It was the treasure light emitted by all sorts of treasures. Oh my God, there are so many people. In the sea of people at the back, there was a delicate and pretty young girl. After seeing this scene, she was shocked by the scene before her. Behind her, there was a purple-clothed old man who sucked in a breath of cold air. All the famous people and forces in the entire firmament purple world have arrived. Ordinary Jindan stage cultivators were extremely rare, and Yuanying stage cultivators were even more elusive. Now that he looked again, Jindan stage cultivators were as numerous as dogs, and Yuanying stage cultivators were everywhere. If Yi Chun were there, he would definitely notice that the two of them were Qin Song, the Kangwu Qin family's master in the Luoxiao region, and Qin Song's granddaughter, Qin Shui. After Qin Shui retracted her gaze from the crowd, she couldn't help but look at Qin Song and said hesitantly, "Grandfather, do you think Big Brother Yi and the others will come?" "Shut up." As soon as she finished speaking, Qin Song glared at her fiercely. The former shrank her neck and immediately showed a wronged expression. Seeing this, Qin Song could not help but ease his expression. After looking around, he lowered his voice and said, "Girl, are you crazy? This is Immortal Palace's territory. If they find out about our relationship with Senior Yi..." It was only after hearing those words that Qin Shui realized this. She immediately stuck out her alluring tongue with lingering fear on her face. "No matter what, I don't wish for Senior Yi to come. After all, there are too many powerhouses here today." Qin Song pondered for a moment and sighed softly. "No, Senior Yi and the others are few in number. Once they arrive, they will definitely become the target of public criticism. But," Qin Shui bit her lip and said worriedly, "but I heard that the woman who is about to hold the dual cultivation ceremony with the Immortal Palace's young master seems to be Big Brother Ye's wife." At this point, she gritted her teeth and said, "Big Brother Yi definitely won't sit by and watch his wife suffer, right?" As a woman, She naturally could not bear to see Su Yuhan being imprisoned, and she could not bear to see Yi Chun and Su Yuhan being separated. Qin Song's lips moved slightly. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly heard an ear-piercing howl coming from the sky. At that moment, the originally noisy Tongtian mountain immediately quieted down. Everyone could not help but look towards the sky. The clouds churned and swept through the world. The space there trembled faintly, and then a huge hole was suddenly torn open. Immediately, a majestic pressure descended from the sky. The current sect master of the void limitless sect of the vacuum region has brought generous gifts to congratulate the dual cultivation ceremony. May the immortal palace reign supreme throughout the ages. As a deafening voice fell, an old figure slowly appeared in the sky. The figure wore a green robe. He looked middle-aged, but his sideburns were snow-white. His eyes were deep like the starry sky. Just his gaze alone caused the surrounding space to freeze. The world suddenly became deathly silent. Then, waves of unsuppressible gasps rang out. It's the sect master of the void, limitless sect, Zhou Dongxian. Someone's pupils constricted violently as he said in shock. The void, limitless sect is known as the #1 sect in the void, limitless sect. Rumor has it that Senior Zhou is even at the late-stage God transformation stage. He's known as the strongest sect master of the void, limitless sect in the past 10,000 years. As his voice fell, countless people were shocked. Late-stage God transformation stage. One had to know that such a realm, even in the immortal palace, was in existence at the level of a sect master. Pucci, at this moment, a terrifying thunder fell from the sky, and then an incomparably deep voice sounded. It turns out to be fellow Zhou. Please forgive me for not going out to greet you. As soon as the voice fell, a middle-aged man bathed in lightning suddenly shot out from the sky-piercing mountain. It's Temple Master Lei of the Immortal Palace. Someone's expression changed as he said, I heard that Temple Master Lei was injured by the fierce man known as Ing a few days ago. Could it be that his injury has recovered? While everyone was shocked, they couldn't help but look at the middle-aged man carefully. They saw that the latter's eyebrows were full, and his breath was steady. He didn't seem to be injured at all. It seems that the previous rumors were just rumors. The hearts of many shook when they saw this. Greetings, Temple Master Lei. Under everyone's gazes, the sect master of the void, limitless sect, Zhou Dongxian, smiled. After not seeing each other for 3 years, I didn't expect Temple Master Lei's aura to become even more stable. I believe it's only a matter of time before you reach the peak of the Immortal Palace. Fellow Zhou, Temple Master Qi and Young Master Qi are currently arranging the ceremony, so they can't personally greet you. Temple Master Lei smiled politely and clasped his hands. I can only bring you up the mountain. No problem. Zhou Dongxian returned the bow. Just as he was about to lead the way up sky-piercing mountain, the silent void exploded once more. The sect master of the Mystic Sun region's Mystic Sun sect, along with the higher-ups, wishes the young master of the Immortal Palace, His Highness Qi Huang, to ascend the immortal Tao and have a son soon. The High Elder of the All-Heaven region's sky-severing sect congratulates. As these voices rang out, 1, 2, 3, a total of 15 figures appeared in the air. These 15 figures were all dressed differently. However, the oppressive might they intentionally or unintentionally emanated from their bodies caused even the sky to tremble. End of this chapter. Chapter 1348. Dead silence. The world was deathly silent. Hundreds of thousands of cultivators looked at the 15 figures that had joined forces, and their eyes twitched. That was because all of them were powerhouses of the various sects in the entire vast purple world. Among the 15 of them, the weakest was at the mid-stage soul formation stage, and there were even 6 at the late-stage soul formation stage. Profound Sun Sect, Sky-Severing Sect, Jade Feather Mountain, Crimson Firmament Sect, Blue Thunder Sect, Wind God Sect. Someone trembled as he recited the sects that the 15 people were from, and his words completely exploded in the crowd like a heavy bomb. Is this where the Immortal Palace's dignity lies? Qin Song, who was in the crowd, looked at the figures in horror. and his scalp went numb. Even Qin Shui's pretty face turned pale. She pressed her palms together and muttered, "Big brother Yi, it's best if you don't come." Now, even she did not want Yi Chen to come. With so many powerhouses of the great sects and shocking old monsters that had not appeared for many years all coming to congratulate the Immortal Palace, it would definitely cause the Immortal Palace's strength to soar. Even if Yi Chen came, not only would he not be able to save his wife, he would also become the target of public criticism, unable to extricate himself. In the silent void, the Immortal Palace's Thunderhall master bowed to the 15 people one by one before saying, "Thank you for coming, fellow Taoists. Please follow me up the mountain." After saying that, his gaze swept across the crowd below again. "As for fellow Taoists from the 4 regions, please follow my Immortal Palace emissary into the mountain in an orderly manner." As soon as he finished speaking, a dozen terrifying figures, including him, took the lead and shot into the Tongtian Mountain. When the people at the back finally ascended the Tongtian Mountain with great difficulty, the scene that greeted their eyes caused them to be dumbfounded. At this moment, the Tongtian Mountain seemed to have been arranged into a battle camp. There were ravines everywhere, and there were formations that surged with power. The terrifying energy that was being emitted caused everyone's faces to involuntarily turn pale. It was as if they were in hell. That's a formation? A sect expert was stunned at first, and then he cried out in shock. And it's a killing formation, a peerless killing formation. Why did the Immortal Palace set up so many peerless killing formations here? Could it be that they want to deal with us? Someone was shivering. Another person retorted, "You think too highly of yourself. If the Immortal Palace really wanted to deal with us, why would they need to set up such a powerful killing formation? They only needed to send 1 or 2 soul formation experts." Everyone, at this moment, Hall Master Lei, who was standing on the peak of a mountain, said slowly, "This formation is not meant to deal with you. You don't have to worry." As soon as he finished speaking, many people heaved a sigh of relief. Hall Master Lei swept his gaze over everyone and said indifferently, "I believe everyone has heard about what happened to my Immortal Palace a few days ago. There are rebels in the lower world's ancient barren world who do not respect us. They even have the audacity to kill the emissaries of the Celestial Palace." His voice was like thunder, ringing in everyone's minds. One of them is surnamed Yi Chen. This person relied on his extraordinary aptitude to barge into my firmament purple world, committing many crimes and even killing countless of my Immortal Palace's experts. At this point, he could not help but narrow his eyes and said coldly, "Therefore, in order not to affect the grand dual cultivation ceremony, this formation was prepared for this person and his companions." As soon as he finished speaking, the sect master of the Void Everlasting Sect, Zhou Dongxian, immediately shouted, "Since they are people of the lower world, they should treat us as immortals. How dare they offend us?" Fellow Zhou is right. The sect master of the Xianyang region's Xianyang sect also sneered. The rebels of the lower world overestimate themselves and want to offend the heavenly might. This is simply throwing an egg against a rock. If the Immortal Palace has any needs, I will definitely help them. The Sky-Severing sect is also willing to help the Immortal Palace kill the rebels of the lower world. The sect master of the Sky-Severing sect bowed, and the Blue Feather Mountain, and the Crimson Firmament sect, and the Wind God sect. In an instant, the dozen or so powerful figures standing in the void all expressed their stance. The dense killing intent caused the void to freeze. More than 10 mid-soul formation powerhouses and 8 late-soul formation powerhouses expressed their stance. Shocking, absolutely shocking. Everyone's eyes twitched. They finally realized that this dual cultivation ceremony was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. I already said that the kid surnamed Yi is just a person of the lower world. Even if he has some strength, how can he shake the Immortal Palace? In the crowd, a leader of a force sneered. This time, the Immortal Palace only issued an edict, and all the experts of the vast purple world have to follow their lead. How can the kid surnamed Yi fight against them? That's right. Another person said, Does the surnamed Yi have the ability to fight against the vast purple world with his own strength? With the killing formation as a supplement and the strong as the main force, maybe after hearing such a show, he won't dare to come. I was looking forward to this person coming to the Immortal Palace's grand ceremony and putting on a good show for us. Now it seems impossible. If I were this person, I would definitely be extremely sullen. My wife is about to marry someone else, but I can't help. In an instant, the noisy crowd was filled with discussions. Some were disdainful, some were gloating, and most of them were regretful. When Qin Song and his grandson heard this, they were so shocked that they almost suffocated. Qin Song looked at the extremely pale Qin Shui and could not help but smile bitterly. "Girl, do you see that? This dual cultivation ceremony is actually a trap, a peerless killing trap to lure out Senior Yi." Qin Shui's mind was blown. Her fingers were tightly clenched as she muttered, "Brother Yi, you must not come." By now, even she did not have much hope for Yi Chun. The Immortal Palace was too generous. Not only did they use the entire Tongtian Mountain as the eye of the formation to set up a peerless killing formation, they even invited all the powerhouses of the entire vast purple world to guard this place. Just as her grandfather had said, this was a trap to kill Yi Chun. At the same time, in the air, Hall Master Lei stood with his hands behind his back. He raised his head to look at Zhou Dongxian and the rest, and said indifferently, "Fellow Zhou, I'll be troubling you." "Hall Master Lei, you're too polite." Zhou Dongxian could not help but shake his head and smile. "In my opinion, after that Yi brat found out that we're guarding this place, he's probably scared out of his wits. How would he dare to come?" "That's right." The sky-severing sect master nodded as well. "Even if he dares to come, he won't be able to leave alive." The rest nodded while sneering. To them, Yi Chen's combat strength was at most at the late-stage God transformation stage. Meanwhile, they had more than 10 early-stage God transformation stage cultivators and 8 late-stage God transformation stage cultivators, including Hall Master Lei. Coupled with the peerless killing formation, with such a facelift, even a cultivator at the peak of the soul formation stage would be able to fight against him. Hearing everyone's stance, Hall Master Lei looked into the sky, and a cruel smile appeared on his lips. "Yi, in order to deal with you, the Immortal Palace has set up many methods. You must come. Don't disappoint us." End of this chapter.